and welcome to the Good Stories Podcast. My name is Jody, back again with my brother Steven, and I don't have a lot ahead today, so I think we'll just do our top 5 new download locations this week. So thank you for listening out there in Catawba, North Carolina, Vance, South Carolina, Napa, California, Lakeland, Florida, and you'll like this, Tunis, Tunisia.
Excellent.
So I never know if these are real places or not. Some of them I know are because people will reach out, but occasionally an IP address or something gets categorized. So I don't know if that's real, but I hope it is. Tunisia.
To those in Tunis, I'm assuming they speak Arabic. Ahlan wa sahlan. Means welcome.
There we go. All right. So back in episode 12 of our first season, I went back and looked. We talked about the book All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot, and that introduced the really wonderful stories of veterinary life in the Yorkshire Dales. And I don't think we could let a whole nother season go by without talking about more of Herriot's stories because they're so good. So today we are doing All Things Bright and Beautiful, and that continues the stories from James Herriot, but these come at the time mostly after he gets married, but before he joins the Royal Air Force. And like the first book, this isn't really a novel as much as a mix of remembered stories and experiences, and some are funny, some are sad, some are just wild, and some are beautiful. And I think throughout is a love for animals and their people and just the way their personalities shine through. So, time for a story.
James Herriot, FRCVS, was a country veterinary surgeon who practiced in the Yorkshire Dales of England in the last century. His first book, All Creatures Great and Small, details how he came to work in the Dales with his eccentric but brilliant colleague Sigfrid Farnan. That story ends with James married and made a full partner in the practice. In this sequel, James tells stories of his life from the few months between his marriage and his call up to active service in the Royal Air Force for World War II. The result is a collection of stories that are tender, touching, and funny in equal degrees. These wonderful stories truly succeed in demonstrating all things bright and beautiful, just like the title says.
Very good. So, I don't think there needs to be a spoiler alert. This is an old book, came out in the 1970s, and his experiences are from the 1930s and early 40s. And there's not a straight plot. So I don't think you can spoil it.
Not at all, and even less so than in the first one. In the first book, there was a general overarching plot as it went from him coming out of college to him becoming a full partner and getting married. So there were some plot points we could follow. This one, every chapter is its own thing. Every chapter he seems to take either a topic or a particular farmer or a particular problem or experience and then kind of elaborates on it. And so it's just a great collection because each one of these is really self-contained but delightful.
Yeah, and an age recommendation, anybody who could handle the words, anybody who can read the words. These are wonderful stories. I encourage my kids to read them from a young age. Not that they have. I don't know why they don't pick it up. I think part of it is they're big books. They're thick, and there are big words in it. So if you could tolerate the words, read it, whatever age you are.
I agree. And you're right. It always actually surprises me how long the books are once I pick it up. I mean, mine is over 400 pages.
Yeah, 48 chapters. I mean, they go on. But it's because each of them is an individual story, and together they form a whole, and they're great. Just wonderful.
It's not that there's like fluff or filler to make up that 400 pages. Each story is tight and punchy. I think he really has come into his craft as a writer in this second one. I mean, he started well, and this one is just really good too. And again, this one really leans into that nostalgia of early married days. He does a little bit of looking back and a little bit of looking forward, but this is very much his honeymoon period. And because of that, it does add this bright and this warmth. It's just a joyous book to read.
So the dedication, because I always read the dedication, is with love to my wife and to my mother in dear old Glasgow town. So he was a Scotsman, but this takes place in the Yorkshire Dales, so no longer in Scotland. I wondered if there's any stories about his mom. They're not in this book, definitely, but I could not remember any that involve his mother. So This was written by an actual veterinary surgeon named James Alfred White. And we talk about that in our All Creatures Great and Small episode. So I didn't really pull a lot on him this time. But James Herriot is the character in this. But he definitely pulls from his life, although there's fictitious names, and he definitely goes off the cuff a little bit just to make it a good story, I think, pulls it together. But I don't know about his mother.
I don't either. Yeah, his family, I can't think of stories he tells about them. That doesn't mean they don't exist, because he told a lot of stories, but not that I can remember. One thing I did look up on this is when this was published in relation to the last one. So All Creatures Great and Small was published in 1972, and this one came out 2 years later in 1974. So that's a pretty good clip, considering how much is in this book. I was wondering about it because sometimes people will write a first one and then like 15 years later, the second one comes out. No, he seemed to find his groove and was really rolling with these.
I found a thing that the titles that we know and I'm familiar with, that's the U.S. publications. They came out in the UK earlier and they had different titles and they kind of pushed them together. So books 1 and 2 in the UK are what I think of as All Creatures Great and Small. Books 3 and 4 from the UK are All Things Bright and Beautiful. But the titles are fun. They were If Only They Could Talk, It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet, Let Sleeping Vets Lie, and Vet in Harness. And then the ones when he goes and joins the Air Force, there's Vets Might Fly, Vet in a Spin. But those are different than the titles I know, and they're all from a poem, but I think we'll probably end with that.
I think that's great. Well, I guess one more thing I will say, and you already alluded to this, this is not straight autobiography. So this is based on his experiences as a veterinarian, but he does kind of telescope some things and expand some things. Some of these stories are things that actually happened several years later behind this time frame. It's not directly what happened to him. So I don't know. It was helpful for me to know that. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. The story stands on its own, whether it's true or whether it's pure fiction. But I don't know. It always helps me to know what I'm reading. And I think in this sense, what we're reading is kind of life-inspired fiction is, I think, the way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, because the stories about his wife, they're so personal and real, I think, totally based off his own experiences. But in this first one, it's describing how wonderful life is now because he's married. So when he crawls into bed from a night call and he's all cold, his wife is warm and she's wonderful and lets him like warm up on her, which is a gift.
Yeah, his wife comes off very well in this book. She seems to be just about perfect. As I crawled into bed and put my arm around Helen, it occurred to me, not for the first time, that there are few pleasures in this world to compare with snuggling up to a nice woman when you are half frozen. There weren't any electric blankets in the 30s, which was a pity because nobody needed the things more than a country vet. It is surprising how deeply bone marrow cold a man can get when he is dragged from his bed in the small hours and made to strip off in the farm buildings when his metabolism is at a low ebb. Often, the worst part was coming back to bed. I often lay exhausted for over an hour longing for sleep, but kept awake until my icy limbs and feet had thawed out. Well, marriage changed that, and she was very kind to warm him up when he got back to bed.
Her kindness is the things he comments on most. She was always so kind.
That and that she's a big girl.
A big girl, but in a good way?
Yeah, he loves it. That turn comes up a lot. She's a big girl.
But there's this terrible ringing. He gets a call, middle of the night. And you mentioned, again, last episode that they write in vernacular. He writes with the accent of the local people. And I can't do accents, but it's still great where the call is, I have a you amiss. Will you come? And he hopes, he's like, is it bad? And hoping that it can wait till morning. No, you come now.
I do enjoy here where he talks about the fact that he doesn't usually have to wake up anymore when he gets up in the middle of the night. He does this almost sleepwalking move where he gets up, does whatever he does without really fully engaging. Says, there was so much night work in country practice that I had been compelled to perfect this system, as I suspect had many of my fellow practitioners. I had done some sterling work while in somnambulistic limbo. And I just had to point out somnambulistic limbo because it's a great term.
Like I said, you have to be able to handle the vocabulary. And there are words in here that I didn't know.
Somnambulistic?
Well, that one I knew. was some later I had to look up. I mean, you get it by context, but he has an excellent vocabulary. But this guy calls, we learn his name, I think is Harold. There's a lot of names and they almost don't matter, but it's a farmer. And when he gets drunk, he sings. Harriet cannot believe it because this guy, he's like small and serious all the time. But evidently he has a pattern where he drinks at night and then he sings these songs. And I love this because I love these old songs. There's Nellie Dean. I think Rose Marie is in here. If I Were the Only Boy in the World. And he does these songs in snippets. And it demonstrates how James cannot stay in that half asleep state because it's so cold. And every time the farmer leaves to go get water or to go put his boots on and takes his sweet time, James gets colder and colder and colder.
And the farmer is stupid drunk. The impression we get is this only happens like once a week. It's sort of the Sunday market day experience. But this guy's neighbors hate him. This is how James came to learn this, because all the neighbors were talking about Harold and saying, man, we hate him. Wish he would go away. He just sings all the time. And he's like, Harold? That guy? But then here, when he gets called out on a Sunday night, he gets to experience it to his own frosting.
It's funny. I think he helps a lamb. There's two. He helps these two lambs be born. And that's always a wonderful miracle, right? This amazing delivery of an animal when it comes out alive, and what a gift that is. And he always puts that in his stories, just the simplest of miracles, just this birthing. Mm-hmm. But this man is singing, and as James drives away, he has this reflection on how that could get old.
And that his neighbors still had an hour to go. Yeah, I love, in this one, he does talk a lot, particularly about lambs and birthing sheep. In the first book, it's really more cow-based. He talks a lot about delivering cows. In this one, it's all about sheep. And there's just two comments I want to make to start off. One is he points out this is his favorite thing ever. It's his favorite part of veterinary practice is delivering sheep, because often there's 2 or 3 in there and they get all tangled up. So it's this puzzle of unmixing them, but they're small as opposed to a cow. So he can manhandle them. It refers to his dainty hands. He has small hands. The farmers make fun of him for it, but it helps him in this line of work.
It's like his superpower with lambing.
The dainty hands of the vet. And so it's fun that this is honeymoon period. He's talking about things he loves, all things bright and beautiful, the things he enjoys about his job during this time. And he definitely enjoys lambing. The other thing that I mentioned in the first time we did this is that I have read this book in very different stages of my life. When I first read it, I was a child, and it was just delightful and wonderful and warm, and it opened up this whole world to me. I think a lot of children who read this for a while think maybe I could be a vet, right? It has that effect on folks. But then I read it again once I became a practicing doctor, and it hits me different. And so as a guy who has delivered a couple hundred babies, yeah, that miracle is a thing. I mean, it doesn't matter how exhausted you are, right? You get woken up in the middle of the night. When a new life comes into the world, you smile. It's always a joyous moment, no matter how bad it is. There's that moment that's just miraculous. And he really describes this in great, great ways.
The next chapter starts where he's talking about basically the establishing of tradition, daily habits with his new wife. And they're so happy together. In the last episode, we talked about Skelda House, where they live, and that's where he stays with his wife. But they're married now. So instead of living down in the bachelor's quarters with his partner, Siegfried, and what do you call Tristan? Siegfried's brother.
Yeah. He's a veterinary student, but at this time, students could practice. It was before a law that got passed in 1948 where certifications were a thing. And so Tristan was kind of just a hanger-on. He was supposed to be seeing practice with them, but Tristan was his own man and enjoyed comfort and the pleasures of life and basically irritating his brother. And so he was always just that third member in the home.
Yeah, so the 3 of them were bachelors together, and they lived on the ground floor. But this house apparently is immense and old and just wonderful and rickety in my mind. And so James with his wife they live up on the 3rd floor. And he describes he has to go downstairs to get water and how he'd hate to do it now. But then he was young and happy and fit.
Didn't bother him at all. He was okay with it.
And when he leaves each day to go to work, he always waves back at the upper window, and his wife waves a dishcloth out the window. And this is their just establishing of their life together, and it's very sweet.
It is very sweet, but it's also hilarious because they do not have furnishings set up. Those of us who are now long married can look back to the early days when, that's the chair we got. Right? That's what everything that's functioning as a table, whether it's a table or not. And that's what they have going here. But you start to see some of the power dynamics between James and Helen, because Helen is going to basically sacrifice herself across the board. There is a ridiculous low chair and a normal chair, and Helen will always take the ridiculous low chair. James tries to talk her out of it. He tries to order her off the low chair into the normal chair. But as we pointed out, she's a big girl, and the wrestling match didn't, though it was fun for James, he says he wasn't sure he would win another one.
He had been surprised by her sheer strength. This is a farm girl. But you got it wrong. It's a high stool. So she's perched
I'm sorry.
high. It's ridiculous. She's up on this teetering thing, and he gets the reasonable chair.
I think later there's a low chair. I'm getting it mixed up. You are right.
They do acquire some goods along the way. This is at the start. But I don't think we'll go through every chapter. Like I said, there are 48, and it is packed. Mm-hmm. Each of those chapters is packed. But I love this one with Jock the dog.
I was hoping we would talk about Jock the dog.
So Jock is a farm dog on one of these calls that Herriot goes out to. Sorry, I flipped back and forth between Jim, James, and Herriot. He's all three. Those are his names. But Jock isn't really part of the visit itself. He's not there to take care of the dog. But apparently it is Jock's role and tradition where as soon as the car leaves, he is after it. And we had dogs that would chase cars down the driveway, but this isn't just a driveway. It's like a mile-long stretch of road between where the farm is and the main road, and this dog takes it very seriously. He chases it the whole way. He waits for this moment. Then Jock has puppies. He sires this group of puppies, and they are just like their dad. They too are chasing after these cars. But they are young and active, and James can see in Jock's eyes how he's losing his role as the car chaser.
Yeah, the goal here is no longer to beat the car. The goal now is to beat his puppies. And there is despair in Jock's eyes because he's still winning, but he doesn't see how long he can hold on.
It talks about how he's gasping the whole time. These puppies are too good, too young. But eventually one time, James comes back to the farm, and it's just Jock. All the puppies are gone. And this is where Jock comes into his moment again, where he is again king of the castle and chasing and beating cars to the roadway.
And why I love this story so much, one, it's just a fun story. But the other thing goes back to those dogs we had growing up. And I'm sure you remember Lobo.
I do.
Now,
of course I do.
Yeah, he was the best dog ever. And all dogs, I think, like to chase cars, and many would chase down the driveway. But our dad was a long-haul truck driver, and his semi, he would take down the road. And there was a corner down the road on the main road from our house called Frenchie's Corner. I have no idea where that name came from, but we just grew up knowing that was Frenchie's Corner. And Lobo wouldn't give up till then. He would book it every morning. So not just the driveway, he would chase for as far as he could until finally he had to give up.
I didn't know he went that far.
He went really far. Now, these are childhood memories, so I may be wildly exaggerating, but this is what I remember is just how far Lobo would run with Dad when Dad was driving to work. And at crazy early in the morning, right? Yeah. I mean, as he went off, but that was just what our dog did. And so that reminds me a great deal about Jock.
Yeah. Well, and I like that Jock gets his moment back. And frequently, James will mention in this just how he loves the different personalities. This is a dog. He sees hundreds of dogs all the time. But everyone has their different personalities, and he sees it with the small animals. He has a heart for cats and dogs, where a lot of these country practitioners didn't care. They do the big animals, horses, cows. But James loves the small animals and sees really the personalities in them. And man, they do have such personality. Anytime you meet a dog, even not as a vet, you can see a personality if you pay attention. And that's what I like about it. You have your own stories about animals that you can see in parallel with the personalities in these stories.
Yeah. That's a great point, and leads really well into the next chapter with Herbert the sheep. You want to talk about personality? I wouldn't think a sheep would have personality. I have never dealt with sheep. I mean, I don't really know them. I've seen them at, petting zoos and things like that. But kind of the whole point of sheep is that they're interchangeable. They're all sort of the same, right? Well, Herbert was a personable sheep. James is on this farm, and it's lambing time, or it's a little bit after. He's always coming in for some clinical reason, which is fun, that he describes, and I enjoy that. But he sees this little sheep that keeps ducking in, trying to get drinks from other moms. Apparently, this sheep's mother has shunned him. For whatever reason, the mother will not let him in. And so he's trying to basically just survive. But James describes him as so personable and so plucky. I mean, you can't keep him down. He's just jumping around looking for food, but
Indomitable.
He's getting it.
That's the word. Indomitable.
Yes. Yeah, the farmer knows this is going on, and the farmer's not a cruel man, and so he's got a collection of what he calls the pet sheep. These are the ones that they feed because for whatever reason they're not going to get fed enough on the outside, and so he keeps talking about putting Herbert among the pet sheep, but he seems to be doing okay, and he's spunky, and the farmer doesn't want to take that away from him, so he kind of just lets him go and sees how he does, and James keeps an eye on the sheep over time.
I like that James asks, why do you call him Herbert? And the farmer says, well, that's my youngest lad's name, and the lamb's just like him, the way he puts his head down and gets stuck in, fearless-like. They admire this lamb because they can see the personality in him.
As is often the case, though James's life is described in rosy terms, he's a vet, which means he's being called out when things bad happen. So the farmers are often undergoing tragedy. There's usually a sick or an injured animal or something coming up when he gets called out. And so he describes this phone call he gets from this farm because a stray dog had gotten in among the sheep and seems to have just slaughtered them all. The farmer doesn't even want to look. He's so scared about what he's going to see because all the sheep are down. So he calls the vet in to kind of take stock and see, can we save any of these? As he begins looking around, he's really surprised to find, though, that, yeah, it looks like carnage. I mean, all the sheep are down, but there's no blood. It doesn't actually look like they've been savaged. And it clicks for him that this isn't that they've been hunted. This is calcium deficiency. And he talks through the mechanisms, how this extreme stress shortly after having birth, that it could make this happen. And this is something he can cure, and he loves it. So he goes around and he's injecting all these sheep with calcium, and they all pop back up and everything is good. But as is often the case, when you're practicing medicine, you tend to know what other bad things can happen. And so this is kind of miraculous that they're all good, but he knows that there could be some complications from this down the road. And sure enough, he gets a call that one of the ewes has basically aborted. She's lost her kids. This stress has destroyed the pregnancy. And it's a really sad moment because you have a really depressed mom now and wondering, how are we going to deal with this? Well, we have Herbert. Herbert deals with this. And it's wonderful because you have an abandoned lamb and you have a depressed mom looking for babies, and the two come together. Now, these are animals, so some trickery has to happen. So the wool from the dead sheep get kind of tacked on to Herbert, so when the mom sniffs him, she doesn't just get rid of him. But yeah, they do great, and it's heartwarming and wonderful and absolutely characteristic of the kind of stories Herriot is telling in this book.
Mm-hmm. I like this line about when he gives the calcium, because so many stories in this, there's nothing he can really do to help. He sees a problem, he knows what the problem is, but this is still before antibiotics and medicines that we have now, and they didn't then. But with this calcium, it says, is one of the most satisfying experiences of my working life. Not clever, but a magical transfiguration from despair to hope, from death to life within minutes. They have this terrible deficiency. They'll die without it, and he can fix it. And I think for him at this time, you'd have to really carry those with you, because the sad ones where he can't help, they're devastating.
Yeah.
He has, chalk powders and things that he gives people for problems, knowing that they probably won't do any good. But here he can actually help, and it's wonderful.
I love it. One of the fun parts about this book is that we get to meet some of our favorite characters from the first book.
Wommadin.
Wommadin bad, sir. There is an Irishman we meet in the first chapter of All Creatures Great and Small, who, before James even gets the job, comes and tells him about his dog who is throwing up. And again, it's one of this first dialect encounters, and he's trying to understand what the guy is saying, and the guy is also stone deaf. So he's having to yell at him to get any sort of information. And Siegfried in that first book says, oh, yeah, he's got a huge dog. It's actually kind of scary. I give him some stomach powders and I try and avoid him as much as possible. Well, here we get some more details on Mulligan and his dog, Clancy.
It says Clancy's treatment over the years had all been at long range. They said it's like he's bred with a donkey, just a massive dog. But also, talking about personalities, he has a growl low in his throat. And James at this time, I think he's taking his temperature, which they'd have to put a thermometer up the rectum. And he's looking at this dog, looking at him, and thinks, no, he's fine.
Yeah, we're good here.
Yeah, he's like, he looks lively. They use that word, lively.
The dog comes back for another evaluation, and this time Tristan is on duty. And again, yeah, looks pretty lively. And so all of them are doing this same thing, and then Siegfried steps in. And I treasure this chapter because Siegfried doesn't play as big a role in this book as he does in the first one, but he's good in here. And this is classic Siegfried because he asks both of them, well, what were your findings? What was your exam? What was the temperature? And all they can respond back is, well, maybe he looked lively. They're totally ducking the fact that they didn't do anything for this dog because they were scared from him. And I love this line here. He passed a hand across his eyes. This is Siegfried. Well, God help us. You, James, a veterinary surgeon of 2 years' experience, and you, Tristan, a final year student, can't come up with anything better between you than the phrase pretty lively? It's a bloody poor thing. Hardly a worthy description of clinical findings, is it? When an animal comes in here, I expect you to record pulse, temperature, and respiratory rate, to auscultate the chest and thoroughly palpate the abdomen, to open his mouth and examine teeth, gums, and pharynx, to check the condition of the skin, to catheterize him and examine the urine if necessary. So he lays into them, right? You need to be thorough. You need to do this. This is what I expect. And the response is great because they say, oh, yeah, absolutely. Actually, we've scheduled another appointment for him. It's when you're on duty.
Yeah, very well. I'll see the dog myself. And then James runs into the dog's owner later on. And he asks about the dog. How is Clancy? Because he's always been Wommadin. And the owner's like, oh, Mr. Farnan saw him. He's so clever. He's a clever man, Mr. Farnan. I've never seen a man work as fast. No, I haven't. And he asks, well, what do you mean? He says, well, now, he saw all he wanted in 3 seconds, so he did. After he listed off all these things, these processes that they must do, Siegfried just looked at him and gave him medicine for the vomiting. Same thing.
Exact same thing. But it gets even better because they're all think, okay, we should probably really do something. So they have the owner, they give him a set time when all 3 of them are going to be there. I mean, they'll anesthetize the dog if they have to, right? They're going to do this, but it's going to be all 3 of them. But they're sitting around and the time comes and the time passes. The guy just cannot show up. Time is not something that is a priority in Darrowby here. And so they wait for like 20 minutes and then decide, okay, we're done. We're gone. We're leaving. And it reminds me of like when you were in college and like how long do you have to stick around waiting for the professor before you leave?
When they're late?
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Well, they took off as soon as they could here because they don't want to see the dog. But as they're walking out, they do see the the owner walking with the dog down the street towards them late. And from a distance, Siegfried looks and says, he does look pretty lively, doesn't he?
Clancy's good. Dog's good. Where would you like to go? It's hard to skip.
It's hard to skip because they're all so good and they're all so punchy. I mean, we can't do them all, but what we can do maybe is just go kind of quick through a couple of these. This next one, though, I do really enjoy because this is Mr. Pickersgill, and Mr. Pickersgill is an educated man. He took a 2-week course in Leeds.
20 years ago.
So he feels like he really knows things, and his vocabulary is hilarious and wrong. And Jim does a great job of writing down what the man says and then trying to jump to, okay, what did he mean by that? And there's several in the chapter here, and they're all really funny. But one of the big problems in this farm is that there's something going on with the milk. So this guy's a dairy farmer, and every time he milks a cow, there's these flecks in the milk. And it's as if the cow has an infection. But it doesn't really make sense because the udder's not hot, it's not inflamed, it's not hard. And this never really happens when his daughter milks the cows. It's only when he does them. Now, James knows this. Mr. Pickersgill has not put this together. And James doesn't have the heart to tell him that with his massive, strong, meaty hands, he's just abusing these animals. Those flakes in the milk are traumatic. And that it would be better if his daughter did all the milking, but there's no way he can just come out and say that because it would hurt him. It would hurt his feelings, this idea that this farmer who'd been doing this forever is doing it wrong. And so James is trying to come up with how to introduce this to this man in such a way that is better for him, better for the daughter, better for the cows, better for the milk. I love his solution. His solution is not to do anything veterinary-wise. Is to kind of pretend to be a doctor because the man is complaining about back pain.
Lumbago.
It is killing him. And he says, I think I can cure that. And this is great. He gives him a recommendation that is all about the milking. If he would just stop the milking, let his daughter do it, his back would get better. The farmer's eyes widened, and he stared at me with a childlike trust in which there was no trace of skepticism. This could be expected, because just as people place more reliance on the words of knackermen and meal travelers than their vets when their animals are concerned, it was natural that they would believe the vet rather than their doctor with their own ailments. So true.
And it works.
It works. It works great.
Yeah, example of the words the guy this is chronic mastitis. And James Dutt says it's of traumatic origin just from the guy's hands. He's way too big and rough with these cows when he's milking. But the guy calls it mastics, those mastics. But that's what he means from that course. He has the knowledge. Mastics. He means mastitis. And yeah, Olive, his daughter, is quite willing to do all the milking. Fixes the milk problem. The guy's back is better. Happy ending. This one actually worked out great.
It does. But it ends with one of his funny words. James is telling the farmer something, and he ends it with, young feller, he said, that don't bother me. When there's stock, there's trouble, and I know from experience that trouble allus comes in cyclones.
I like one of his call-outs is, I have a calf with semolina. Semolina. Salmonella.
So close. So close.
Oh, I marked a couple of these because they're hilarious. The biblical cord, like an umbilical cord.
Yeah.
That 2-week course really stuck with him.
He's an educated man. All right. I keep planning to skip stories, but I can't skip the next one because it is wonderful on several levels. This is the one where Siegfried is chastising the other two for losing things, for keeping things on farms. And they're always trying to steal like the extra knife that Siegfried has hidden. But it goes both ways. They're all forgetting things. They're very forgetful young men. But Siegfried always takes this lecturing and pompous tone. And he's like, you just can't do this. And he's always talking about how you should take your example from me. You'll notice I never forget or leave anything anywhere. And he gives them a lecture and they're like, right, got it. But then they all go to a farm together. And of course, the first thing that happens on this farm is this guy starts pulling stuff out of his pocket saying, Siegfried, you keep leaving stuff here. And keeps handing him things over.
Every time. Count on him to leave something at every visit. I love this, though, the part of the lecture when he's talking, Siegfried's talking to James and Tristan about how they need to do better. He says, you may wonder why I never leave anything behind. Well, I can tell you, it's just a matter of concentration. When I lay a thing down, I always impress on my mind that I've got to lift it back up again. That's all there is to it.
All there is.
Sage wisdom.
The answer. Well, they go to meet this farmer, though, and they are all together. And the farmer is like rattling off all the things that Siegfried always leaves behind. But there's kind of a subplot in this one where the farmer is described as clever. And James explains that in this society at this time, that's not a good thing. That basically means he's a know-it-all. He's hard to impress. He's not a great guy. Nobody really likes him. And so they begin going around the farm, and he's got multiple things for them to see. And so Siegfried is doing this really sterling veterinary work, but nothing impresses this guy. But then finally, they come up upon a cow who has a growth from the backside. So it's like a cricket ball. I mean, or a tennis ball. It's this lobular tumor that's growing out of the back. And this is going to require some pretty intensive surgery. And so Siegfried takes off his coat and he asks the guy to go get him some hot water. He's preparing to do this. The guy goes and gets water, comes back, and Siegfried is putting back on his coat. And the guy says, well, aren't you going to start? And he's like, oh, I'm done. What? You're done? He's like, yeah, the tumor's gone. What? I mean, they go and look. This guy is like staring. There's no evidence of any sort of wound. There's no tumor. Everything is just totally normal. Siegfried is being very nonchalant. He straightens his tie. He chats with the guy a bit. And then they walk off the farm. I mean, they leave. James and Tristan are like, what just happened there? Because they have no clue whatever.
And where's the tumor? This thing was big.
It is what we call a pedunculated tumor. So what that means is even though it's the size of a grapefruit, there was a tiny little stalk that attached it to the cow's body. And so when he was examining it, that stalk broke, the skin closed over where the stalk was, and the tumor literally slipped into his sleeve.
Gross.
So like a magician, he just carried on with it, kept it in his sleeve. In the car, he like rolls it out. Tristan took it back to college to have it dissected in the lab, but it was just a great move. And they're applauding Siegfried for his aplomb here, for the way he handled this, the way he impressed that farmer. They were also impressed by some of the other things he had done. He had used these really cool little kind of forceps to pull something off of a cow's eye earlier, and they hadn't seen those before. So they're asking, can we see those? Those look really cool. He's like, well, of course you can see them. Nope. He left them at the farm.
I'll show you later. It says, I didn't say anything, but I knew, and Siegfried knew, and Tristan knew. He'd left them on the farm. After the whole lecture, Siegfried is always this roller coaster. Brilliant. Brilliant at what he does. Brilliant at his job. But he does the lecturing and a total hypocrite on the things he lectures about. The next chapter is actually a memory, I think, of meeting his wife's father or being on a date with her. There's several of these stories where he's remembering back to his dating of his wife, mostly because it's hilarious. It never goes well. It says he's jinxed. I think in this one, they have this tea together. He's invited to tea and the wonderful spread of food. But Helen has these little siblings that just think it's hilarious that she has a caller. And the dad is so non-responsive. The girl is trying to help him talk to the dad, and he just shuts it down every time. It's always so awkward with her dad. And in this one, he's so excited because suddenly there's a sick cow. He's like, oh, here's my chance to actually do something, to show him how well I can actually do my job. The cow dies. He goes to treat it. He knows what's wrong, but it's not soon enough. And the cow dies. And it says the jinx was still on. Every interaction with this girl and her dad prior to them getting married, awkward.
Terrible.
So Awkward.
It's immediately following the injection. He gives this injection and it immediately dies. Like, this could not have gone worse. The stories are just so good because they're like that. And that one just hits home. Like, he is so depressed about this. But then the next one is a classic. And we have to talk about Mr. Crump and his homemade wines. He goes onto this farm and he does whatever he does with the animal. And
Wait. The disease is interesting in this one. It's called Monday morning disease.
Mm-hmm.
So that is completely foreign to me. It's these cart horses that work all week, but then all weekend, and then on the morning of Monday, suddenly they're hurting. There's this terrible problem, Monday morning disease. That's crazy to me. I didn't even know that was a thing.
This will make more sense to you as you get older. So what this is, not that anybody cares, is a condition called lymphangitis.
I care. I'm interested.
Your lymphatic system is part of what controls essentially swelling. And so things influence that, namely gravity, namely the way your blood is flowing. And so if you are up and active and moving, the blood is flowing in a more efficient way, and you don't tend to get this sort of seeping, this edema that can occur. When you stop working, often, especially if you're standing, gravity will pull this fluid out of your lower extremities and you'll get edema or swelling in your legs or ankles. So this happens in humans all the time. Horses are way bigger. And especially these horses that are working 6 days a week and taking Sunday off for church, right? Because the farmer isn't working on Sundays. While the blood is flowing during the week, they don't get this same sort of lymphangitis. But then they rest for that Sunday, they're standing, and they get this pooling in their hind legs. And so that's this lymphangitis that occurs, and it's Monday morning disease because that's the day after the day of rest. And so that's what allows it to pool. And then as they get the horse moving again and working over time, basically that swelling goes down. And even the guidance he gave to the farmer here to basically massage it, to knead it, to rub it, we'll often do compression stockings, things like that in humans. It makes sense what's going on here with the horse.
But are these old horses, or is it just the level of activity is so big and then that day of rest?
The older the horse, the more likely it is to occur, but it can happen in younger horses as well.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, it's not the point of the chapter, but I thought the name was interesting. Monday morning disease. But Mr. Crump makes his own wine, and nobody likes it. His family's so rude about it. They're like, "Oh, don't offer that." He's trying to be hospitable to James, who just helped him and his horse. And I think the wife just kind of brushes him off, but then she's out the door. She's off to somewhere. And James turns and says, "Hey, I haven't had my dinner yet. I could take a drink beforehand." "Yes, please."
Mr. Crump is so excited because nobody shares his enthusiasm, and he is enthusiastic about this. And so he starts very gently. He pulls out this amber wine, pours him a glass, and it's delicious. James loves it. He thinks it's wonderful. He's so excited. He gets another glass. Well, now that Mr. Crump has somebody who's interested in his hobby, he goes and gets more bottles. And if you've ever hung out with a wine guy or like a home brewer or somebody who really loves this, if you show some interest, they are going to bring you everything. And Mr. Crump does. And each one is different and each one is unique. And he wants James to appreciate the flavors. And they proceed to drink heavily. I am always shocked in these books, the sheer volume of alcohol that gets consumed.
Truly. There's so many kinds, though, and he's so proud of them. There's rhubarb, elderflower, blackberry, and James is enjoying what's that called? The tasting notes and being like, ooh, this one there's a mellowness. And he talks about how you can almost taste the brambles. And he's just having such a wonderful time, like tasting and identifying things on his palate. And the guy loves it. They're just enjoying this so much, this tasting. But if you taste enough different kinds of wine, suddenly you don't taste so much anymore and you're just drunk.
Yeah. By the end, he's still giving tasting notes, but he says, yeah, it all tasted the same at that point. And finally, though, somebody knocks at the door. and they say, hey, we knew you were here. They told us that we could find the vet here. There's, is it a calving? I think it's a...
I feel like the rough ones are always a calving.
It's always a calving, right? Down the road, can you come? And James is like, absolutely, right? Drunken through it, but he's ready to go. As he's going out the door, though, this man who is now his bosom friend cannot let him go out without a hat. James doesn't wear hats, but Mr. Crump does. And so he puts this big old flat hat on his head, and James is moved, and he goes out to this home that's nearby to help them deliver a calf.
The cap is touching. It says, the tweed cap, which I now put on, was the biggest I had ever seen. A great round, flat pancake of a thing, which even at that moment I felt would keep not only my head, but my shoulders and entire body dry in the heaviest downpour. This thing's ridiculous. And he's staggering, but he has to go help. And he gets there and he tries to ask for a bucket of water and some soap. And nothing happens. It says it's just gibberish. Like he's trying to say the words and it's just bleh. Nothing rational comes out.
There are 3 guys there and they are waiting. They are ready to help. They are eager and kind and waiting for instructions. But yeah, he is so drunk that he cannot communicate with them. He also is finding that he's saying everything in a whisper.
Well, he shifts it because he starts loud and it makes no sense. So he reverts to whispering. And so they whisper back.
It's great. Eventually, they do get hot water and soap, but he can't get the soap to cooperate. It keeps squirting out of his hands and into the dung channel and off the walls. So these 3 guys are like standing around it. He describes it like, cricketers on defense waiting for the ball to come to them as they're jumping after the soap as he's trying to, sterilize himself. Eventually, he does go, puts his hand inside the cow. He's able to do it. He says, though, that the hat keeps slipping over his eyes, which means that when he stripped down to wash himself, he somehow managed to put the hat back on, which is ridiculous because he doesn't wear hats and why would he? But it is quite the scene and quite the event.
It says that he's taking so long and it's so ridiculous that even the cow that looks at him, it says, gave him a disgusted look. And it was like she was saying, for heaven's sake, get on with it.
And it was all silent. It was all this quiet because the whispering. But eventually he lives. And then this might be my favorite line in the whole book. To say I had a hangover next morning would be failing even to hint at the utter disintegration of my bodily economy and personality. Only somebody who had consumed 2 or 3 quarts of assorted homemade wines at a sitting could have an inkling of the quaking nausea, the raging inferno within, the jangling nerves, the black despairing outlook.
Oh, man.
It was a rough morning.
Tristan gives him this raw egg thing, which just sounds horrible to me, but I guess that's a cure-all. But
Tristan is experienced with hangovers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They do... Mr. Crump's wine does come up. And you drank that? That stuff is so strong.
It has poison. But then they asked the farm he had gone to after for the calving, the farm he went to afterwards to help deliver the calf was the Bamfords. And Siegfried's like, they didn't know you were drinking, did they? He's like, no, of course not. Apparently they are strict Methodists and will never have him on the farm again. It's all around bad timing for poor James.
Oh, the next story is Mrs. Donovan. I can't skip Mrs. Donovan.
No, we can't skip Mrs. Donovan.
Each story is very singular, so I kind of have to look at my notes and be like, oh, it's that one. Mrs. Donovan is a busybody lady in town, and she has a tiny little dog named Rex. And they are in everybody's business. And she is just everywhere all at once, and she has... these, I think they're shampoos and conditioners. She has knowledge about things because she loves her animal. So James knows her. But one day she comes to him actually in need. Her little dog, Rex, he was run over by a car. And it's horrible. James can't help him. He actually dies on the spot. It ran right over his body. And she's devastated at this. That dog was her partner in all her busybodiness around the town. And James tells her, you know what? Maybe you should get another dog. And she's like, no, I could never do that, right? Her heart has been broken with this dog. And so she's still around town frequently. And this one kind of takes a turn because then, go ahead.
Well, real quick, before we move to the turn, I love this about James. I think this tells a lot. Now, as an author, he is so humble the way he portrays himself. He is always making himself look like an idiot or a fool or kind of second fiddle to all these other people. And I don't think that was really the case. But once in a while, just the kindness of him, I think almost accidentally shines through. Because Mrs. Donovan is a pain in the neck. She's always criticizing him. She's always giving advice to the people that he's just done things for, especially with cats and dogs. And he says, of course, they believed her and had implicit faith in her. She had the irresistible mystic appeal of the amateur. And on top of that, there was her habit, particularly endearing in Derby, of never charging for her advice, her medicines, her long periods of diligent nursing. And so she is really a thorn in his side. But yeah, during this episode, he is so gracious and so kind. He drives her home. He takes care of the poor dog that's dying, that's suffering. And again, he doesn't just say, I think you should get a dog. He tells her, you need to get another dog. He says, I give this advice to everyone who loves a dog and loses it. And so I really think his warmth and his compassion for this woman that he didn't really have any reason to be warm or compassionate to, I just appreciate that enormously about him.
Yeah. Well, and he, I think, understands people who love their animals. He's drawn to animals naturally. It's hard for him to dislike an animal, although there are a couple. But in this case, he's helping a woman who's sad, and not just sad, but devastated by this loss of her dog. And that's where he shines, where that's something that he can see a commonality in people. And he says, yes, you need a new dog. And she says, no, I can't.
Yeah. And then, though, a really sad thing happens.
It does, but it's kind of unrelated to Mrs. Donovan. He gets a call about a neglect case. And he goes with this local official to this shed out back, and they open it up, and it looks like nobody's been in there in maybe a year. And there's been a dog tied up, and it is emaciated and everything bad. Everything you think with neglect. This dog has been neglected, barely alive, hidden in this dark shed for a year. And apparently they would prosecute that kind of neglect, but the official says no, the owner is actually simple. And this dog basically doesn't have a home. And in this case, for nobody to take care of it, James would put the dog down. But Mrs. Donovan is still a busybody. And here is where she pops back up.
I love this, though, because, again, she has sworn she will never have another dog again. But James sees her in the corner, sees her eyes pointing in, and he turns to the police officer, and he does this whole thing. You know what this dog needs, first of all, is a good shampoo to clean up his matted coat. Huh?
What?
The police officer doesn't what? Yes, and then he wants a long course of some really strong conditioned powders. What's that? The inspector looked startled. There's no doubt about it, I said. It's the only hope for him. But where are you going to find such things? Really powerful enough, I mean. I sighed and straightened up. Ah, well, I suppose there's nothing else for it. I'd better put him to sleep right away. I'll get the things from my car. And then he walks away. This is just a smooth move.
Yeah, he cues up exactly the thing she uses and recommends to people. And she comes in and she takes this dog home. But James is worried because then he doesn't see Mrs. Donovan for a while. She's always everywhere. And she disappears. Yeah. I think it's a matter of weeks. He doesn't see her.
His faith in her, though, is impressive because he has to talk the inspector into this because the inspector doesn't want this dog to suffer anymore. This dog has had a horrible life, and that's just not fair. And he says, he's telling James, I don't know what you're up to here. I can't do this. It's not right for this dog. I held up a hand. Believe me, Inspector, you've nothing to worry about. She's a funny old stick, but she's been sent from heaven today. If anybody in Derby can give this dog a new life, it's her. What he needs is lots of good grub, care, and affection, and that's just what he'll get. You can take my word for it. But then there's this long time where he doesn't see him.
Mm. But when she comes out with this dog, it's clear that she's just been nursing him for weeks. And the dog's name is Roy. So she thinks, oh, that's similar to Rex. That was her dog before, Rex and Roy. And here was a dog that needed her and she could care for it. And it says the task of like unmatting this dog's fur would have just been monumental. And this is the pride of her life. This dog lives a long life. I think he's 12 later on, and James still sees him active and happy. And every time he sees this woman going forward, she says, Mr. Herriot, haven't I made a difference to this dog? It's the shining moment of pride where she could help care for this dog that otherwise would have been put down. This is one that really gets you when you read it. Like, it's wonderful.
This one made me cry. We've talked a lot. I cry a lot when I read, and this one... Haven't I made a difference to this dog? Yes, Mrs. Donovan, you have. That's wonderful.
Mrs. Donovan had, because they're talking about how Roy's doing so well, but Mrs. Donovan, too, had her reward. She had a faithful companion by her side every hour of the day and night. But there was more to it than that. She had always had the compulsion to help and heal animals, and the salvation of Roy was the high point of her life, a blazing triumph which never dimmed.
I think we need to move on from that to the Darrowby show.
This one. Like you said, James often looks like an idiot. And this one, he gets asked to judge a county fair, I think, a Darrowby fair. And there's a small animal section. There's a part where they have to measure horses. And, you know, he has a ruler. He could do that. No problem. Yeah. I guess Siegfried usually does it. But James gets to do it this time.
Yeah, Siegfried's busy. And so this is a treat, right? He gets to go to the fair. He's got this minimal work he has to do. It's just going to be fun. This gets to be a special moment for him. He gets an extra ticket so he can take somebody. And of course, it's Tristan. Mm-hmm. Tristan always manages to kind of waggle his way into anything that's fun. And so they show up at the fair and James starts to go about his business. Tristan, of course, just heads to the beer tent. So he always finds the refreshments.
And the people. He knows everybody by the end. He's got a date by the end. Tristan spends his entire time in the beer tent.
But James sees somebody else here. He sees young Helen. And again, this is a reminiscence. So this isn't after they're married. This is reminiscing back when they weren't even dating yet. And Helen is there with somebody, Richard Edmondson. I love this because he's kind of the villain. He shows up over and over. This is the guy that Helen's dad wanted her to marry. He's a rich farmer. He's got money. He's always seems to be doing well when he's around Helen. And James just sees them together and it tanks him.
Well, and her dad and his dad are there too. So clearly this guy gets on better with her dad than James does.
There is an inside track right there. Yeah. But again, it never works quite right. James gets called because there's a cow at this fair that was going to be showed and it's broken a horn off coming out of a cart. So it struck its horn and it's broken off. And horns are very vascular. There's a blood supply in there. There's arteries coming up. And so James goes and tries to basically fix this and correct this. And he's getting blood spattered all over him as he's trying to do his job. He ends up putting a dressing on it and he fixes the whole thing, but he looks up covered in blood and muck and dust and mud, and there's Helen seeing him in this state.
Hi. And the handsome man next to her.
That's right. But it keeps getting worse. There's a dog show, and he doesn't have to judge the dog show, but one of them calls him over because there's a dog who seems to not be doing so well and thinks he needs a vet. And sure enough, this dog has distemper. It's an infectious disease. He's got a fever. This dog is miserable with like this white mucus coming out of the eyes. The temperature is through the roof, and he says, no, take this poor dog home. It needs to be taken care of. But the owner is one of those kind of show owners and is furious. He's like, takes temperature again. He was just warm from being in the car and just keeps yelling at James over and over and over that you have to let me show this dog. We drove a long way. And it just keeps coming after him. And everywhere James goes, this guy is like tracking him down to try and get him to change his mind on the dog, which James won't do. He then gets called to measure the ponies. Ponies get measured in hands, and he even describes that. He says to the uninitiated, right, horses are measured in hands, which are about 4 inches long, and he's got this stick that you measure the ponies with, and this is how they get judged. He is just appalled by show people.
Yeah. Well, and there's that guy next to him who's like giving him the inside scoop on how everybody cheats. Like these tricks they use to like make them seem lighter or heavier depending on which class that they want to be in. And he's like, watch out. Some people get angry. And he's like, no, this is all pleasant. And this beautiful blonde woman is showing a horse. And he says the number and she's like, oh no, you meant 12 too. And he's like, no, that measures at 13 or whatever. It says her smile vanished. And she just hates that he won't change the number. All these people are getting so mad at him.
Yeah, and some of those tricks are just downright brutal.
Yeah.
Like one pony comes up and makes the height, and the guy's like, yep, they put weights on him for the last half hour. They've like bagged him down to try and like compress him to make the weight. Or another one, like the pony kept like dropping, like kept kind of like shrugging down every time he would measure him. And the guy's like, yep, they're poking him. What?
Yeah, poke him with pins.
They would take a needle and like poke him in the back, and so the pony would flinch. And I mean, like just horrible things you wouldn't expect. And everyone is now mad at James because he's got some integrity and is standing by his decisions. And so things are going very, very poorly. But there is a lunch,
and it was great.
He does say another great line. I didn't have the pleasure of Tristan's company at lunch because he had strategically placed himself well down the table between two strict Methodists so that his intake of magnet was trebled. Apparently there was beer at every setting, and so he found two teetotalers to sit between with so Tristan could have 3 beers instead of 1.
Yeah, like, are you going to drink that? No.
It's a great move.
Very strategic.
But what comes next is the thing he'd been looking forward to the entire time, and this is the judging of the family pets.
It says, the fashion of exotic pets was still in its infancy, but I experienced a mild shock of surprise when I saw the variety of creatures on show. Because there's dogs, there's cats, but also, it says, innumerable rabbits of sizes and colors, guinea pigs, white mice, budgerigars, 2 tortoises, a canary, a kitten, a parrot, a mynah bird, box of puppies, and a goldfish in a bowl. And he has to pick a winner across this span of types of animals. And there's no rules. I don't think anybody gave him a construct. Like, this sounded easy.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know what to do, but he comes up with a plan. Like, he is going to assess the care and feeding and treatment of these animals. He goes through it very analytically. It actually cracks me up where he's interviewing each of these little kids, mostly their children,
Right.
and these are their pets. But he takes it very seriously.
Yeah, and one kid really impresses him is the owner of the goldfish. Now, this isn't his favorite animal. He says if he were going to just be picking on the ones he liked, there was like a puppy and a cat, and there were these cute little fuzzy ones, and he would have just gone with those. But he was going to try and do this fairly. And this kid was spot on. He knew all about the feeding and the care. He seemed to have a good idea of kind of the biology and the life cycle, even some of the diseases that could occur. So he's like, all right, that's the winner. And so he announces it. And there's a couple others. I think there's like, I can't remember what number 2 and 3, but number 1 is the goldfish. And he was waiting for this like polite smattering of applause, right? For everyone to go, oh, okay. No.
Yeah, mine says tight-lipped silence. There was a change in the vibe, a change in the atmosphere. So he knows he did something wrong. What's wrong with the goldfish?
So he goes to find Tristan, who is, again, in the beer tent. I think he's found his date by this point. Life is good for Tristan. He just makes things work. And as he's sitting there, he overhears a couple of others in the tent talking, and they're railing about just the ethics of the world today. The fact that everyone can be bribed.
It's all rigged. That vet had to choose the squire's son, even though it was a goldfish. James had done his utmost to apply process and fairness, and he had selected the squire's son. And everybody just assumes he was bribed to pick him.
That's right. He was bought off, or he just was sucking up to the local noble. I've never even seen the squire. I didn't even know he had a son. It just, things aren't working for him. And so this is the end of the day. He's covered in filth. He still has the arterial spray from the horn, on his face. And he's trying to start his car, which isn't starting. And he watches Helen and Richard Edmondson walking by. laughing and loving life. And this was the Derby show.
He also goes into the agricultural part because he's like, at least here, there can't be any guile here. Like, these are potatoes and things that people grow on their farms. But he finds someone he knows, and there was cheating. There was cheating even amongst the produce.
Yeah, this guy stole the potatoes from this other fair.
He is so disillusioned by people at these things.
I love the Derby fair.
Not a great day for James. So the next chapter, I mean, there's so many stories here. There's one about this wonderful widow and just the toughness of the people in the Dales, where her husband died, but she makes it work even against all odds. And I think the admiration for the farmers here comes across in James's stories. There's also ones about, Helen, and they're trying to get stuff. Apparently James doesn't know how to buy furniture.
Oh, we definitely need to talk about that one. Sorry, we need to talk about number 14.
Okay,
yes.
Well, I'll finish up. There's examples of just how tough these people are, but they make it work so frequently, and it's admirable. But yes, the next story, I called it Helen and the Smelly Books. This one's great.
Poor Helen.
She's so kind. She is very kind to him.
Well, again, they're trying to furnish their home. They're trying to build their life together. And James is always out and about. Now, this is before the day that you could just order stuff on Amazon, right? Or go to Walmart or Costco or whatever and IKEA and just get everything. And so what they're relying on are often people getting rid of stuff or, small yard sales or, if he happens to be in one of the neighboring towns, is there someplace he can stop? And so since he's always out and driving around, he gets assigned to furnish it. This is a bad decision.
He's really bad at it.
But he means well.
Yeah.
He doesn't realize he's really bad at it. And he keeps bringing things home. And you just see kind of the disappointment in Helen's eyes. Although she never says anything. She's very gentle with him.
It says Helen was very nice about it. But it says, I had a blind spot in these matters. I'd go to a sale where he's supposed to get furniture and come away with a pair of brass candlesticks and a stuffed owl. He'll buy these useless figurines and things instead of, a chair that his wife can sit on. He's not trying to be mean.
No, he really thinks he's getting good deals.
A stuffed owl.
It doesn't go well, but he is going into town. So there's something he has to do for work. And so this is going to be the opportunity to go through these markets, right? These auctions that have things. And so surely he will be able to find something here. Now, it is so crowded at this market that he actually leaves his car parked somewhere else and takes a tram down to the market. He got good advice on this because he would never have been able to park his car, and he starts walking around. And I'll just read it. I wandered around, fascinated, for quite a long time when my attention centered on two tall piles of books, quite near to where the auctioneer was selling. I lifted one of them. It was the Geography of the World. I had never seen such beautiful books, as big as encyclopedias and with thick embossed covers and gold lettering. The pages, too, were edged with gold, and the paper was of a delightfully smooth texture. He is just so in love with these books, but there's no way he could possibly afford them, so he wistfully moves on.
Looking back, I feel that fate took a hand here, because I had just reluctantly turned away when I heard the auctioneer's voice. Now then, here's a lovely set of books, the Geography of the World in 24 volumes. Just look at them. You don't find books like them today. Who'll give me a bid? There's silence. Nobody bids on these books. Somebody says like half a crown or something. He looks at these books and they're just wonderful. He cannot believe that nobody is bidding.
3 shillings! And he wins them. 3 shillings for this wonderful set of books. He can't believe his luck. And he goes up and they're binding them with twine in these 2 stacks. Do you remember doing that? I remember doing that, where we would take rope and kind of wrap it around, and that way you could carry books in a stack.
12 hardback books in a stack wrapped with twine. There's no way that would work. I remember tying books. They were not 12 hardback books.
Well, this is where the first problem occurs, because he goes to lift them and they are heavy. I mean, he is straining to try and pull these up, and he is barely able to get them off the ground, and he starts staggering his way. Now, remember, he doesn't have his car. He came on a tram, and as he's walking towards it, the twine breaks on one of them, and the books go everywhere. He's gathering them up and trying to tie them up again. And this happens over and over. And his hands are bleeding from the twine. His muscles are sore. But finally he gets to the tram.
And they're like, you can't ride with these. Take up way too much space. But he can't. He imagines himself walking. It was like a mile to his car with these stacks of heavy books. Cannot be done. Eventually, one tram driver takes pity on him, and he gets to stand up front with them.
And he finally gets to his car. Success. He loads them in. They fill up the back of his car because he's in this tiny thing. And he starts driving home. And at this point, he's really excited to be driving home because the smell of the city is starting to get to him. I mean, all the smoke and vapors and he's a countryman now, and he does not like the city. But the problem is, as he gets further and further out of the city, that smell doesn't go away. It's the books.
They stink.
Horribly. He's got his head out the window because he's just getting asphyxiated in the car. But his enthusiasm remains undimmed, and he gets them to Skeldale House. And remember, they live on the 3rd floor. So he goes up to the top, and he's bursting with excitement, and Helen is excited. What did you get? And he says, I'll show you. It's a great deal. And he goes down the 3 flights of stairs, grabs the books, and lugs them all the way up to the 3rd floor.
Here's where he calls it their eyrie on top of the house.
Helen is not impressed.
Well, she said, is that all? Oh, he's like, well, I couldn't carry anything else. These were as much as I could handle. He went to town for furniture and came back with these monster books. Beautiful, no doubt, but they reek.
Totally. Eventually, she very gently and politely recommends that maybe they shouldn't be in their living space because they smell so, at least until they dry out, right? And so at this point, he is crestfallen and he's so tired, and he once more picks up these 2 stacks of books and takes them down to the main living room, into kind of the library sitting room there, at which point Siegfried comes in, and he is not as patient as Helen, and they stink. And he says, no, those can't stay in here. And so poor James has to take the books one more time down into the basement. This house is incredible. Apparently it has a full, massive wine cellar that doesn't have wine anymore. Tristan is down there splitting firewood. This is a big enough area that he can chop firewood downstairs. And this becomes the home of the geography of the world in 24 volumes.
I love how Tristan does it, though, because James is telling him this story. He says blow by blow, the account of his story. But the compassion, which has always been and still is uppermost among the many facets of Tristan's character, came to the fore now. Tell you what, Jim, we can put them in there. He finds this bookshelf for them. He places a chair in front of it so James can come down any time and enjoy his books, and they can smell away when they won't bother anybody else in the house. It is very kind of him, as James worked very hard to get those books home.
Again, so many good stories. I do like the part in the next one where Siegfried quits smoking. And anytime Siegfried adopts a new philosophy of life, he makes sure to spread it to those around him. And so there's stories about where he would be slapping cigarettes out of the mouths of farmers and yelling at them in their face, because now that he couldn't smoke anymore, he wanted everyone else to stop smoking. James says, even now there are grizzled men who tell me with a shudder, nah, I've never had a fag sin. Mr. Farnan told me to stop 30 years back. Nay, bugger it, the way he looked at me, I don't do it.
Tristan is not so beholden to his brother, and he's quite confident all of his smoking is quite good for him. And it seems to be. Tristan just seems to do well. He pulls some pranks here. He's in All Creatures Great and Small. We learned that Tristan is somewhat of a pranker, but here they backfire on him. He ends up being chased by a policeman.
Yeah, Tristan is always pulling pranks, but he comes out of it in the end, and it always goes right. All right, this is probably the most excited thing I am to talk about in this entire book. It is time that we introduce you to Granville Bennett. Was it the Christmas episode we might have already talked about him, or was it a short? Might have been a short. Anyways, we are now going to talk about Granville in full.
We've mentioned Granville. I think it was in a short, but Granville Bennett is, I feel like this is Stephen's happy place.
I love him.
Everything
deeply.
about Granville. So go ahead, brother.
This all starts with the dog. It starts with the dog. And again, James loves to do small animal work. He loves dogs and cats. It's so much warmer and cleaner than being out in the, on the farms. They bring them into the surgery. He's stronger than them and he just loves them. He loves these small animals. But this one is really, really sick. And it's beyond what he could do. But it turns out that in these days, there was one man who specialized in small animal work. He lived a little ways away. He was in a different city, so it's a drive. But this is who people went to when they had these problems. And James had never met him, but it starts with a phone call. Hello, is that Mr. Bennett? It is indeed. A big voice, friendly, full of give. Herriot here. I'm with Farnan and Derby. Of course, heard of you, laddie, heard of you. Oh, thanks. Look, I've got a bit of a sticky job here. I wonder if you'd take it on for me? Delighted, laddie. What is it? A real stinking pio. Oh, lovely. She's 12 years old. Splendid. And toxic as hell. Excellent. And one of the worst hearts I've heard for a long time. Fine, fine. When are you coming through? This evening, if it's okay with you. About 8? Couldn't be better, laddie. See you. I mean, he is just so joyous, so confident. And what Herriot is describing here is a terrifying clinical situation. This is something that's far beyond anything that he could ever do. But Granville doesn't blink twice. He's just ready and says, bring him. And so Herriot takes the dog, puts him in his car, heads on over to the city. And this is where he meets Granville Bennett. Granville Bennett is a gigantic man. He's larger than life, but he's not fat. He's just big. He's strong. He has a huge pipe. He keeps describing it as basically the size of a coffee cup that he's always rubbing with this soft cloth. I mean, he's one of those guys that is just amazing. And he watches him in surgery, and he is just phenomenal. James cannot believe how good he is at what he does with this dog. But afterwards, the dog is recuperating. It's still under anesthesia. And so Granville invites him out. And it is just one thing after another. It begins with James admiring his pipe, and the smell of the tobacco coming off it is something that's just so, so rich. And Granville's like, yeah, do you want some? And James is like, well, no, I couldn't. And he says he opens a cupboard that would have shamed like a small tobacconist, and he pulls this stuff that James can't afford and never smokes, and like just throws tins at him, says, take that with you. And then he invites him for a beer. And this is where really things get interesting. They go to the club, and again, Granville won't let him pay. He says, nope, it's members only. You couldn't pay if you want to. I got this. And he keeps like tapping the counter and keeps getting beers come to. And so he downs 4 pints of bitter at the club before they even go home. And James is struggling to keep up. He is struggling to try and drink the way Granville does. And Granville, it doesn't even affect him. He's just fine with it.
Those didn't count.
Granville is wearing an impeccable suit. He's driving a Bentley. In the last episode, we talked about the cars James drives, where like the seats aren't even bolted to the floor. They're flying backwards.
They won't
never
start.
Yeah. He's in a Bentley, this massive, beautiful car. And then they get home and it moves from alcohol to the addition of food. Granville has these pickled onions that are the size of like apples, the way James is describing them. And he's like, here, have some. And James has one. It's delicious. But his stomach is starting to gurgle. And he politely declines a second one. And Granville goes into this wounded puppy mode. Like, well, I always liked these myself. I just thought you would enjoy them. And so James mans up and begins eating more of these onions on top of all the beer he's had. Meanwhile, Granville pours out bottles of whiskey and is pouring just tumblers full. I mean, just downing these massive amounts. He decides he needs a snack. And so Granville pulls out this massive slab of beef and makes this giant sandwich with like pounds of meat on it. James is bleary-eyed at this point. He's struggling. His stomach is just about to explode. But anytime he tries to not eat, like it wounds Granville, whose generous heart is like, no, you've got to do this. And then Granville's wife shows up.
Zoe.
And James is expecting Granville is such an over-the-top personality. He's such a larger-than-life man that he's expecting this really kind of devoted, like almost hero worship, kind of tame little mousy wife. No. She is straight off a magazine cover. It is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. She's bright and vibrant and smart and like says he wants to be a better man just knowing she exists. But he is stupid drunk. And like, is blearily like, so I say hi to her, looking like an idiot.
He's like burping onions.
She bought Granville like extra shirts. She's like, here, I got these for you. And Granville's like, wonderful. James, have two. And like throws these shirts. I can't. Like, no, take them.
He's like, no, they're really nice shirts.
It is just fantastic. And he's just belching and feels terrible. He looks awful in front of this beautiful woman. And Granville is unimpaired. Granville is just living life. And it is fantastic. And so finally, after all this, the dog has woken up. She feels great. James feels terrible, says it always takes him at least a week to recover from an episode with Granville, and he heads home. And this is his first encounter with this great man, and there will be more.
It says that Granville is a, quote, dedicated devotee of the work hard, play hard school. And you use the phrase, but it's in the book even. He seemed to fill the room. And when James gets there, he says, James Herriot. He said it as somebody else might have said, Winston Churchill. Like, he is earnest in his enjoyment and generosity, but it is to the detriment of James Herriot. He cannot hang with this man.
No, Granville is just more than James can do. But he loves him, and Granville loves James, like, honestly. And again, just the sheer skill of the man as a surgeon it comes through very, very strongly in the work of just how good Granville is at what he does.
Yeah, it's good, though. James gets this image of what he thought he wanted to do, where it's this sterile surgery and there's nurses attending in the surgical theater. And he does love that, but I think it's another Granville story where he does also recognize that he loves what he does, the country practice. So he loves this and sees the value of it, and Granville's so good at it. Hilarious that his hands are huge.
Yeah.
But he does the small animal work and amazingly deft and caring of these animals. Granville also has 2 dogs, and they have silly names like Phoebe. He calls them Feebles. He refers to himself, this large man, as Daddykins to this dog.
You can't not like Granville Bennett. He's just a wonderful character.
But I'd pass on those onions, man. Ugh.
You couldn't. You could not.
That's it. It's not that he's playing a game. It truly hurts him when his generosity is declined, like he'd done something wrong. So James just can't say no. He tries. Doesn't work.
There will be more Granville Bennett stories.
Yeah. There's more stories here about the horses and the passage of horses, where they used to be the mainstay of farming, right? These work horses. And there's this man named Cliff who still loves them, and wonderful description of how the horse time is coming to an end during the time of this story. And Cliff, though, one of these dalesmen, he's just so hardy. And it says at the end where they end up having to put this last of the horses down. And he's reflecting how the whole byre used to be full of horses. And now this last one is old and unwell, and they put it down. But the man is indomitable, and he's up on a tractor and still finds joy in things, even though he was of the time of the horse. Mm-hmm. And I really like that, where you feel the pain and the poignancy, but it's not just a sad story.
And James Herriot's love of the men of Yorkshire is obvious in everything he writes in here, because it's that kind of grit, that kind of pluck. The fact that they can just watch the world evaporate around them, everything they knew, everything they loved, and the line he keeps saying that they all say is, these things happen. And then they keep going and they do something different. And yeah, Cliff here is a great example of that.
Yeah, Cliff's last line, and I think this man is in his 70s, but he says, I don't mind learning somewhat new. I'm no but a lad yet.
That's right. I think the next chapter we can skip because we've already talked about the next chapter. The next chapter is a Christmas story, and so I would refer listeners to our Christmas episode where we talk about the Herriot Christmas stories.
And it's hilarious. That was great.
It's worth listening to. But the next one I would like to talk about, if you're okay with this one, this is the one with Marmaduke Skelton and Ewan Ross. Sometimes I think the names in here remind me of the Psych names. You know, so the show Psych, he's inventing ridiculous names. Talmadge McGooliger and similar ones. Well, Marmaduke Skelton is up there among the weird names.
Well, it says his brothers also got weird names. So it says their parents must have thought they were destined for great things, for they named their 4 sons Marmaduke, Sebastian, Cornelius, and Alonzo. So he was in good company.
This is also where James talks about, I think I mentioned this earlier, the Veterinary Surgeons Act of 1948. Apparently, after that time, licensure was required in order to practice medicine on animals. But before 1948, where these stories were taking place, licensure was not required. And there were all these kind of amateur veterinarians around that didn't have formal training, but they would kind of hang a shingle and they would go out and treat animals. He said some of them were totally quacks and some of them were awesome and actually really good. He described some of his favorites, but then he talks about Marmaduke. And Marmaduke usually just goes by Duke, but he says it's hard to like Duke. That Duke tended to be kind of a headache for the other veterinarians around. He was brash, he was abrasive, but he did work really hard. And he worked in a town with another veterinarian who was actually moving towards retirement. So, and this is Ewan Ross. So this veterinarian was in his 50s and had a very kind of different style of practice than certainly James has or even than Siegfried has. He was never in a hurry. He kind of chose when to go out. You get the impression he doesn't like doing night things. He's almost semi-retired. But James would go and help him periodically and try and, give him some assistance. And one time he's there and they're having lunch. And it's a wonderful lunch. And his wife comes in, not James's wife, Ewan's wife, and says something like, oh, this farmer wants you. His cow's uterus is out. This is a big deal for vets. This is after a cow gives birth, the uterus actually inverts and comes out of the body. And then it is a monster job getting that back in. In the first book, this is what James talks about. This is the one thing that daunts Tristan's good humor, is just the effort and the work of this. And so James is starting to sweat, but Ewan is not concerned. He finishes his lunch. They have some dessert. It's delightful. And then they head to the farm. But when he gets to the farm, he's not the first one there. Duke is already there working.
The farmer doesn't want him to work anymore. He's been trying to get, it says this great engorged mass back in the cow. And it's not been going well at all. And the farmer's like, maybe you should try. But this other vet, Ross, he's like, no, I don't mind. Let him try. He has no tension, it seems like, between someone else doing the work or attempting it.
And I think he's just so confident in his own abilities too, that he's like, I don't have anything to prove. You got this guy? Let him do it.
Yeah, he's been doing this so long and he has his methods. And I think it's Siegfried who says he has his own way of doing things. But they seem effective. But this other guy, Duke, the guy with the big name, he is trying physically to shove this thing in. And over, it says that the cow, all it has to do is one push and the whole thing's back out. I mean, if it's not all in, it's so easy for it to just pop back out and he's back level 0. And this guy is exhausted, and they just watch it happen.
Yeah, I think he's smoking a cigarette, just watching.
They're just watching him work and work and work and work, and finally, the guy's just smoked. He has no energy left.
He won't quit, though. The farmer makes him and says, let's see this other guy do. And Duke's like, well, if I couldn't do it, he can't do it, and stumbles off. And then Ewan Ross enters, and this is just great.
He stops smoking, and he says, could you bring me a pound of sugar? You want sugar? Yeah, pound of sugar. Yep. And He pulls certain things out of his car. He also asks for a pig stool. And I forget what he pulls out of the car. Like
Two things. A beer tray, and it is a beer tray. Like James can see the advertisement, the logo on it, and a whiskey bottle. But it's empty. And so he puts an empty whiskey bottle on the beer tray. James has no clue what's going on here, and he's ready to help. He starts to strip down, and Ewan Ross is like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm going to help you." He's like, "Oh, there's no need. I've got this. You just relax."
Standing there with my strange burden, I felt like the stooge in a conjuring act, and I wouldn't have been a bit surprised if my colleague had produced a live rabbit next. But he puts some hot, clean water in the whiskey bottle, and he does this magical way, apparently, of putting sugar on this mass, shrinks it.
So I love everything about this.
Amazing.
Yes, he throws this pound of, he coats the uterus with it and basically says, yeah, it makes it smaller. So it seems to. James is looking at this and he can't believe it. This guy also, James was ready to like put an epidural in the cow to like paralyze it so it wasn't contracting and pushing this out. The guy's like, no, don't worry about that. He puts the pig stool under the cow's belly, runs a rope over the head and over the back, and somehow in this like magical way causes the cow to trip forward over the stool in a place where it's totally immobilized with no medications or anything.
He hobbles the thing.
Yeah. While he's doing that, the sugar is working on this evoluted uterus, and it is now small enough that he takes the tray and uses the tray to push it back in easily. He then takes that empty whiskey bottle that is full of hot water and he pushes it into the uterus. And James says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm putting the horns of the uterus in place. There's these two horns that go to the side. And using the neck of this whiskey bottle, he's able to push those where they're supposed to go. And by pouring the hot water in it, he's cleansing it at the same time. And James is like, do you want to sew that in? And he's like, no, if you put the horns in properly, it never comes back out. The whole thing takes like 3 minutes.
Amazing.
It is just unbelievable. And so he's, dressing again when Duke, who has gone to like wash up, comes back and he sees that it's done. And he's just angry at this. And he says, I love this. It's all right for some people, he snarled. Some people with their bloody fancy injections and instruments. It's bloody easy that way, isn't it? Then he swung around and was gone. As I heard his heavy boots clattering across the yard, it struck me that his words were singularly inept. What was there even remotely fancy about a pig stool, a pound of sugar, a whiskey bottle, and a beer tray?
Seemed very effective.
It's just a great move.
Would the sugar work?
I would be hesitant to do it. My worry would be infection.
Yeah.
But clearly it worked here. So we are not recommending this as a clinical practice.
No, these are stories.
Call your veterinarian, please.
Steve is a doctor. He has to put the disclaimer.
Yeah, but
this
that's
is not medical
story.
Advice. All right. I love this next one. I love Mrs. Bond and her cats. So James, as we said earlier, has a heart for small animals. And this woman is a cat lady. Apparently she has a husband, but it says James never sees him like move or look up from his newspaper, despite the dozens of cats around him at all times. And she has inside cats and outside cats. But he likes them. They share this bond of enjoying cats. And so this lady takes to James. And she has so many cats, he's there quite a bit. But he finds one he doesn't like. This is rare for him.
Boris
the cat.
Apparently he's part puma.
I think he might be. He's savage. But is this where they talk about rapping?
Yes, and we got to talk about this because there are some things Herriot takes a great deal of pride in. One is lambs, again, delivering lambs. He loves that. But the other is wrapping a cat. He can throw a towel around a cat, tighten it up, wrap it up, and he takes very great pride in this. And it says, as I say, I rather pride myself on this little expertise, and even today, my veterinary colleagues have been known to remark, old Herriot may be limited in many respects, but by God, he can wrap a cat.
I have tried to wrap a cat, and that is a skill. We had a lot of cats growing up, like a lot
so
of
many
cats. They were all outside cats, so they'd make more outside cats. And the mean ones, especially if you have to help them, you got to wrap a cat tight. He's so good at it. He can leave whichever part he needs exposed and wrap up all the sharp bits. Very well done. But this lady, and I like the diversity of names she has for her cats. They crack me up. Eddie Hapgood. Cliff Baston, Wilf Copping. These are just names for her cats. But she has a method for calling them in.
It does say she did slip up on one case because Alex James had kittens 3 times a year with unfailing regularity.
Alexa. She's going with Alexa James. But she calls these cats in by name. So she's calling a cat named Bates. And she has an inflection. And that specific cat, out of all the cats, comes to her. And it says James witnesses this multiple times. I love that one cat's name is 7 times 3.
Yeah.
That's its name.
I love that too.
She's had 3 kittens 7 times running, you see. So I thought it rather a good name for her, don't you?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Splendid, he says. Good. But then, Boris.
I do like that he, one of the reasons he likes her is because every time he shows up, she has a pair of gauntlets ready, a pair of gloves, because she's worried about him getting scratched. She knows cats. And he says so many people just laugh when the vet gets hurt that this was, it was balm for him. It was delightful. But yeah, Boris has a bone stuck in his teeth.
It says, Boris loathed the very sight of me, and the feeling was mutual. But she gets Boris in somehow. She has the cat ready. So many of the farmers, they'll call James out for a case, and then they have to go find the animal. There's many stories, or that's part of many of these stories, where they're never ready. And so it takes forever to catch the thing. But she has Boris ready ahead. Unfortunately, Tristan decided to accompany James this time. He is not what we would call a small animal person.
Not at all.
Does not have the love of cats like James does. And he doesn't have the respect for Boris that he should. Tristan basically lets the thing out. She worked hard to get that cat in, and he lets it out. And it just goes everywhere. There's pandemonium because Boris is out.
Tristan has a great time. So he is causing just pandemonium, as you say. He's trying to catch it. It's running by. They never do. It's not possible. And so this all ends up winding down. But Tristan loved it. He keeps talking about what a great experience this was, how exciting, how fun it was. It says, Mrs. Bond, on the other hand, when I next saw her, was rather tight-lipped over the whole thing. Mr. Herriot, she said, I hope you aren't going to bring that young man with you again.
She's like the only person who doesn't really like Tristan.
That's right.
Usually people love Tristan. This next one has a colonel. I think he was a colonel in World War I and a very stately, formidable gentleman. But I love this, that these serious people often have this tender spot for their animals. And this man has a kitten or a cat named Maudie. And she's sweet, but she gets hit by a car. But with the dog earlier, it had gone straight over him and had died. Maudie didn't get hit like that. It had injured her head, her face. And so her jaw was slack. And James looks at this and thinks, oh, I'm going to have to put her down. I can't fix this. But he realizes he knows someone who can. Maybe can. And he calls Granville.
Yes. Enter Granville. And of course, Granville can help. And so James takes this cat out. Granville steps in and again is just this whirlwind of activity in the OR. It's always the first thing. I mean, he takes care of the animal immediately, and they're doing things that are just incredible. I mean, repositioning the jaw, screwing it in place, wiring it in place. I mean, they are saving this cat's life, and it was something that James could never do. No one could do this but Granville. But then Granville's done, and Granville wants to invite his friend James to do something. James is ready to shout, no, I can't. I got to get back. I can't do it. He's like, no, James, you don't understand. I want you to come with me to a conference. There's a professor. He's going to be talking about metabolic diseases. And James is like, you mean like milk fever, acetonemia, like my stuff? Like big animal stuff? Granville's like, yes, of course. he wants to stay abreast of these things. So why don't we go? And he says, and besides, I see that you're dressed immaculately.
Yeah, he was right there. I hadn't dashed through in my farm clothes this time. With the memory of my last visit still painfully fresh in my mind, I was determined that if I was going to meet the charming Zoe again, I was going to be A, properly dressed, B, sober, and C, in a normal state of health and not bloated and belching like an impacted bullock.
Helen, agreeing that my image needed refurbishing, had rigged me out in my best suit. And so Granville is complimenting him on this, and he's like, all right, yes, I will do this. Right, I'd like to come with you. Just let me ring Helen to say I won't be straight back, and then I'm your man. And this is where the adventure starts. The lecture is a long ways away. It is not local. They are going over mountain ranges. These mountain ranges have been closed recently because there is so much snow. But there is no slowing Granville down. He is just barreling through this in his Bentley and is really not concerned about anything that happens. But then they finally get there, and James is excited. It's getting late, though. And so he's wondering how much of this are they going to be able to see. Turns out like 3 minutes. They get into the room, and they are like thanking this professor for his day of lectures. It's all over. That's not why Granville came. Granville came because this is a sponsored event, and there is going to be refreshments and socializing. Everybody knows Granville. He walks into the room afterwards, and everybody shouts out at Granville. And James says that he's now spent many, many days with Granville over the course of his career, and this is always the case. Have you ever known people like this?
Our mom.
Our mom's like this. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, not with the drinking or anything like that. She knows people everywhere.
Everywhere.
Since I was a kid. But James says that he could take Granville to a jungle of the Amazon, and somebody in this old long-lost tribe would jump up and be like, well, hello, Granville, old boy.
I had one other guy that I worked with that reminds me very much of this. I'm going to change the name because I'm not in contact with it anymore, but this was when I was in the Navy. And I remember that we had a guy I worked with, we'll just call him Captain Smith. He was an internal medicine doc. He was wonderful, but also kind of crazy. He actually reminded me a lot of Granville. And I remember the Admiral of Navy Medicine West came and did like an officer's call meeting at the little hospital I was at. And so, I'm just a little nothing 03, just hanging out in this big room. All the brass is there. There's an admiral, all his aides, and he's talking. He goes for like 15 sort of minutes, and he's rattling like this, just droning on, talking. And then at the end, he and Captain Smith, what the hell are you doing here? The captain is just, good afternoon, Admiral. He's into the back, and the Admiral's like, I swear I could be in Nepal, and Captain Smith would just pop up behind a rock to say hi. It was great, and it reminded me exactly of this scene.
Well, still the pattern continues with Granville where James ends up drinking too much. He doesn't want to, but the guy just goes through it, and it's part of the social calling. He drinks way too much. He eats way too much. And then they get back in the car to drive through a snowstorm over mountain ranges.
James says that he thinks if he could have gone to sleep right then and rested, this would have been okay. But no, the car is going sideways on regular intervals. So he's got car sickness on top of way too much scotch, way too much food. And finally, though, they get through because nothing stops Granville Bennett. And they get through to the other side, and they're at the house again. And who should appear but the beautiful Zoe shows up one more time with James completely drunk, slack-jawed, green-faced, rumple-suited. Says, I stared into her eyes, gave a gentle hiccup, and staggered past her into the house.
But the good news is the cat, its jaw is fixed, and it's amazing. It's amazing that this surgery did what it did. And James is now back home with the cat, Maudie, and she's okay. But he's looking out over these mountains because he knew that they had just driven over them. And somebody asked him, you're not thinking of driving over there, are you? He's like, oh, no. He's like, oh, good. Glad to hear that. It's blocked, There hasn't been a car over there for 2 days.
Nothing stops Granville.
I do want to mention a word that when I read these as a child, I was surprised. They used the word bitch.
Mm-hmm. Regularly.
And they mean it as a female dog. That's what the word actually means. But when I picked these up as a kid, because we gave an age recommendation, it occurs to me I should point this out.
Good call.
It's a female dog. That is what is meant. It's not an insult in any way. It's not a bad word or profane in any way. And that word has definitely changed over time. In this book, if you read it, it means a female dog.
Yeah. There are a couple bad words that do sneak into here. He is quoting farmers occasionally.
Yeah.
Not many, but there are a few. And I guess we didn't mention that earlier either. So we're saying. Again, story after story here, and I highly encourage you to pick up the book and just read it. There's a couple chapters devoted to medical students or veterinary students that come and hang out with him. And as a guy who now teaches medical students in kind of country practice, this hit home for me. Because when you've been doing this for a little bit and you've been working, all of a sudden the students come in and they have so much energy. They have so much energy, but they're all so different. Most of them are wonderful. I mean, you don't get into medical school without being smart, without being driven, without being dedicated. And so it's really fun to talk with them. Some of them know more than others. And then every once in a while, you find somebody who's brilliant. And you start asking them the questions and you're like, oh, man. You are going to go farther than me. Like from the beginning, you realize there's something about them that they are going to make it in the world. And so for a guy just doing normal practice, it's fun, but also a little daunting. And James runs into this with one guy. This guy shows up and he's clearly a superstar genius. He's clearly going to be a research PhD mastermind. He is going to be a big name in veterinary practice. And James does his normal attempts to quiz him, and it doesn't go well because the guy knows so much more than Herriot will ever know. But what the guy doesn't know is practically what you do on a farm. And so all the nuts and bolts things on the farm, how to get dirty among pigs and cows and things, that's what this student learns. And it's kind of delightful to see him get knocked down a rung. But again, James is clear that he's going to make it. He's going to be big. And he says that 20 years later, he's actually at a conference in this man's honor. So he's just there attending, but he's at this conference, and it says afterwards, the guy steps down and actually recognizes him. And there's something kind of sweet about that this big, big name in the world of veterinary medicine got something of value in this 2 weeks he spent with Dr. James Herriot in the Yorkshire Dales.
Yeah, and the guy, he took it as a good lesson in humility, because people say they're talking about him as, oh, he's such a big deal. But Harry's like, no, he's all right. He did the thing. He took the humbling experience on the farms, but still continued and has done really well with it. So it is a good example of someone brilliant, excellent at what he does, but not just egotistical.
Yeah,
learns from it.
There's a great line here because initially he was kind of intimidated and irritated by him. His name is Carmody in the book, and it says, "It was when Carmody was skidding face down through the third heap of muck that I suddenly began to like him." I like it.
It points out that James finds the what are they called, the medical students helpful because they can open gates for him.
Yeah.
So many gates to open and close as they go to these farms. I think this next one's really interesting, where James is on a farm for lambing again, or it must be in the springtime, I guess. He's lambing again, but he notices not the lamb he's there to see, not the sheep he's there to see, but in this different pen, this ewe is dying. And the farmer's like, well, she'll either make it or she won't. And James sees it suffering. And when the farmer goes into the house, he actually runs to his car, gets this anesthetic to, in essence, put it to sleep. And then he's back to his post like he didn't do anything. Because the farmer just wanted to we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to let him take his chances. James is not impressed with this farmer. This farmer tried to mess around with this ewe that was delivering for the longest time. So by the time James got there, something that would have been easy was really hard. And then this other one, the one you're talking about, the guy had really screwed it up. I mean, he had injured this during a lambing, and he says, look, if you had called me out, I think I could have saved both of these. But yeah, James has a soft heart for all these animals, and he's not going to let this one suffer. So he sneaks this drug into him, this massive dose of a painkiller anesthetist to basically put him to sleep, like you said.
He ends up back on this farm a couple days later, and he sees that sheep, the one that he thought he put down. She's up on her feet. she's eating. He is shocked. The farmer doesn't know, but he says something like, it was like she was drugged. She slept for days. She slept for days, but it allowed her body to heal. She had been suffering. The pain hadn't allowed the sheep's body to recover. And being able to rest actually helped her body to heal.
This is a great line. I had discovered something by accident. That ewe's life had been saved not by medicinal therapy, but simply by stopping her pain and allowing nature to do its own job of healing. It was a lesson I have never forgotten, that animals confronted with severe, continuous pain and the terror and shock that goes with it will often retreat even into death. And if you can remove that pain, amazing things can happen. It is difficult to explain rationally, but I know that it is so.
And then the next chapter, it actually uses this as a lesson. He comes across this dog, I think it's a poodle, who again is suffering. Different problem, but she's in pain, she's suffering. And James can't fix it. He actually thinks again, I'm going to have to put her down. But he does put her to sleep, not all the way, but she sleeps for days. And the removal of that pain allows this dog to recover. It is amazing and a great demonstration of how his experience at his work helps him serve other animals even better.
The lessons he learns from one case move into another. And this is what it is to gain clinical experience. And I love the way he describes it and the way he shows it. The next story we can do real quick is just fun. So, well, first of all, we meet a new friend for James Herriot. He gets a dog. When he gets married, one of the things that came with his wife is her beagle, Sam. And Sam becomes his car dog. And it helps him because he's always driving by himself. He's always out in the farms, always doing things. And so to have a companion to help with the loneliness, he loves Sam. And so Sam shows up here and there as a background character.
The demonstration, though, where he talks about, so here Sam is a year or two old and lives a long doggy life. But it says that even in the middle of the night, Sam will get up and hop in the car. And James is always half asleep, but he'll pause, right? That pause so Sam has time to get up in the car. That it took him years after Sam died to remember he didn't have to do that anymore. It was so ritualized, such a part of his pattern. I love that.
That is great. Well, the funny story here is about a budgie. A budgie is a parakeet, right? Is that?
It's a little bird.
Yeah, a little bird. There's this old woman who is mostly blind. She won't wear glasses. She's too vain for that. But she has a budgie that has a beak that is overgrown. And so James comes in and he is going to be able to trim this beak and help this budgie. And he reaches hand into the cage, pulls the little bird out, and it abruptly dies in his hand.
It's very sudden.
He didn't do anything. This was the time. But this little bird apparently was not a singer. So it never spoke. It never sang. And so the woman has no idea because she can't see. And so she thinks he's just holding him. And he's staring at this like, what do I do? As far as I know, this is the only successful substitution of a dead animal in literature that I'm aware of. Because usually people try to do this and it doesn't work. But in this case, James pulls it off. He says, I'm going to need to take her to my surgery. And so he takes this bird out. He finds a bird seller like down the lane, gets another green budgie that looks kind of like it, and then takes it back to the old woman. And she's amazed how quickly he did the surgery. She's also amazed because now the bird will sing to her, and it's just wonderful.
He's like a different bird. And he's like, is that so? In what way? He's so active now, lively as can be. He chatters to me all day long. It's wonderful what cutting a beak can do. All right, this reminded me of a story I had forgotten, and it just makes me laugh. In high school, I got to house sit. I don't know if you know this story or not. I got to house sit for my boss. It was a beautiful house. They had 2 little boys at the time, and I think their youngest son had just gotten a goldfish, like at a fair or something. Just a goldfish. Generic goldfish. And so I was house sitting, feed the goldfish. I was there a few days. The goldfish died. I understand.
I had no idea. Go on.
This is not the funny part. The goldfish dies. And I knew it wouldn't be in trouble. Fish die all the time. But you know what? You can get a new goldfish. They were cheap, right? Less than $1, I think. So I called our brother, who lived in town back then. I'm like, hey, could you pick me up a goldfish? Because that's what, pet store in town. He's like, what kind of goldfish? I'm like, a plain goldfish. He brought me a 6-inch thick fish. This swimming thing, it didn't fit in the bowl. It's almost a koi. He's like, you said you wanted a goldfish. It was gold and very large. I meant like a little one, like you get at a fair. So I have this huge fish and I had to leave it with a note.
I replaced your fish.
The other one died, and here's this huge one. I thought it was very funny, and I'd forgotten that happened. So those are good times.
That is excellent. No, I did not know that story.
It'd be like replacing the budgie with a parrot or something.
Here's a macaw.
Exactly. Anyway, I'll just say about Jip. There's one about a sheepdog named Jip, and he has a brother. But interesting thing, he never barks. That's his thing. He's this silent dog. But his brother gets sold to another farmer, another sheepdogger, I guess. And there was one woof when he sees his dog brother in the future. And I love Jip. It's a good story.
It is a good story. Well, this is another reminiscence chapter where we go back to James and Helen. And again, all the stories about them have been painful thus far. All their dating has not gone well, and it seems like this is going to follow that typical pattern. They're not actually dating here, but there is a village dance, and James is at the dance. He's there with Tristan and a little group of friends, and who should he see come in but Helen, who's, of course, with Edmondson.
Oh, that guy.
That guy. And James is in despair, but Tristan is, as always, supportive and comforting and says, oh, no, she's not with him. She's got a group, like we've got a group. Go dance with her. But James can't get near her. It just doesn't work for him, and eventually he gets called off to a case.
But he bumps into her on the way out the door, and he says this isn't like him at all, but he tells her, come with me. And she does. She gets her coat and they go on a call together. And this is their moment where they bond. They are kissing in the house. Her head is on his shoulder while he's going to this place. The call goes well. I mean, so frequently the calls go wrong and there's this jinx anytime he's around this girl. But here's where it goes good. And they're hosting him and Helen after the animal call. And somebody asks, like, is this your young lady? And he puts his arm around her and says, yes, this is my young lady.
I found this chapter to be soothing because usually the dating chapters are just painful.
Yeah.
This was the first one where things went well. I mean, and there is much smooching, and this is they're kind of together after this. So it's just a sweet chapter. And it also shows, well, actually, all along, Helen loves animals just as much as James does.
Yeah, totally.
And so this is something that she would have to, right, for them to be a good couple. They would both have to share this love, and they do. And so the fact that they get to be there for these puppies being born, and it's a wonderful chapter.
So the next one involves a family. I think in the first book, there are many different families mentioned. In this one, the family is the Dimmicks, and there are a lot of Dimmicks. And then they have their associated family called the Pounders. So it's this whole group of people whenever they show up. But he becomes their vet. It says they do care about their animals, and he really likes these families. But there's this one little girl, and she's actually sickly, but she has a puppy of her own. And this puppy, his name is Toby. He has a grand name, actual papers, but he's sick here. And this is a job for Granville Bennett.
And I loved this, the way he describes this, because this puppy just keeps vomiting, can't keep anything down. And he's trying all these things. None of them work. The Dimmicks keep showing back up. But eventually one day, the puppy actually vomits where James can see it. And it's not just a vomit. It is projectile vomiting. It goes across the room in an arc. And James says, is this the way he vomits? And they're like, well, yeah. It's like, why didn't you tell me? Like, we didn't know you wanted to know that? Why would we tell you that? Well, any medical person right now knows this is pyloric stenosis. So projectile vomiting, the exit from the stomach is called the pylorus, and when it becomes narrowed or stenotic, this classic projectile vomiting is, I mean, this is textbook pediatrics and apparently veterinary medicine as well. But he says this at this time was not something that people were doing surgery on this. It was not something that he was capable of doing. But Granville is capable of doing anything. He calls him up and says, Granville, have you ever done this? He says, I did 5 yesterday. That's an exaggeration. Granville said, well, no, I didn't do 5 yesterday, but don't worry. I've done a lot of these. And away they go. And again, Granville is awesome. The surgery happens immediately and everything is going really well. And once again, Granville invites James with him. And James is trying like mad to decline. He just can't do it. No, I've got to get back to Derby. I've got to get back and help Siegfried. I've got rounds this afternoon. I can't do it, Granville. And he's like, James, I wouldn't dream of taking you anywhere right now. I just wanted you to come home and have lunch with us. He's like, well, okay. Yeah, I can do that. I can go home and have lunch with you.
It's 12:30. Lunch is at 1. He's promised Zoe that he'll be there. Granville has promised Zoe he'll be home.
He does
at 1.
Tell James, though, I do have to stop off at my branch office first. James is like, I didn't know you were doing so well that you had a branch office. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's right by my house. It's really convenient. And so they pull up to his branch office. It's a pub. It's what he calls the pub right by his house. He says, no, it really is. I do a lot of business here, so come on in. And James is like, no, I can't do it. And Granville is like, oh, come on. I promised Zoe I'd be home at 1. It's a half hour. And James is like, well, how much trouble can I get into in a half hour? Turns out a lot. And once again, he shows up for lunch to the beautiful Zoe, drunk out of his mind because Granville did this to him in a half hour.
I don't even know how that's possible. 30 minutes.
Well, he meets a licensed victualler, so another friend of Granville's, and the two of them just drink. And they both have this, again, they tap the bar, and the bartender refills their glasses, but then gives another one to James. And so James is just trying like mad. He says he starts with beer, and then they move to whiskey sodas. And so he's probably 8 drinks in this half hour. Ugh. I mean, it is staggering.
Couldn't do it. Nope.
And again, though, Zoe is always so happy to see him, though. Is always like, James, as he just like bleary-eyed, like tries to communicate with her. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and he does eat her lunch there, and it describes how he carefully pours gravy, but he's just ridiculous doing it. And it says that he looks up at Zoe and giggles guiltily. Zoe giggled back, and I had the impression that she felt that though I was a peculiar individual, there was no harm in me. I just had this terrible weakness that I was never sober day or night, but I wasn't such a bad fellow at heart.
I do love the next line. It usually took me a few days to recover from a visit to Granville.
Oh, boy. The next story is a sad one, actually. Because this man kind of gambles it all. He kind of grew up in the Dales, but he had a job in the city, and he'd always missed it. And so this is in his blood, and he's so happy to be there, and he's such a hard worker. And James is proud of this dairy farm he's creating, like just by sheer cussedness and sweat and determination. He has a young wife, and he's doing all the work. But then there's sickness in the herd. And this is one where James can't help. He knows what's wrong, but they don't have the medication to fix it. And what this means for this farmer is the end of his career as a farmer. He's done. He's trying to build this dairy farm and has put everything into it, and it sinks him. James can't help. But that phrase you used earlier, like, well, these things happen. So tough, these people, where things that would just devastate me, just like end of a dream. And they just are like, well, these things happen, and they take the next step that they have to take. He ends up going back to the city, and his farm is bought by someone who uses it as a weekend retreat. And this place that he poured his heart and soul into ends up just being unused, sitting there. But James remembers the work put into it, and I think that's important. Mm-hmm. And he remembers this man. They don't stay in touch after the man moves away, but how difficult would it be to be called out to help, to know what's wrong, and to not be able to? It's just, those ones hurt, and they should. He had to go through those, and so did the people like this guy, Frank Metcalf, whose farm dreams didn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, and it definitely, again, expresses the love that James Herriot had for these men, for these farmers. His respect for just how hard farming was and is so clear. And I think that those of us who aren't farmers, those of us who haven't lived this life, that don't understand the work, the grinding, backbreaking work, it's helpful to read books like this, I think, to at least know that that's a thing.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the next chapter where James is getting fat.
He got married.
The farmers, I think, use the phrase, "You're on good pasture, lad," because he keeps getting, he's getting chubbier, his wife is a great cook, it sounds like. But he does describe that he has this phobia of grease. And I actually remember some of these scenes. These scenes have stuck with me because there's a farmer that he sees where all they eat is fat. There's these home fattened pigs and just the strips of white fat. He says he remembers seeing one guy just eating through a steak of just nothing but fat and saying, "I like to feel the grease running down my chin." Ugh. And I remember like that feeling on that. Bad. But he talks about one episode where there's this wonderful old couple and he does a calving, early in the morning. They invite him to breakfast and he's like, "I would love to join you for breakfast." And he sits down, and to his horror, he sees just these two massive slabs of fat that are lightly breaded and cooked on the griddle. And he's like, "I can't eat that." I mean, in his head, he's like, there is no way I can do this. But he also knew that there was no way he could insult this kindly old woman by not eating it. And so he's panicking inside when he sees something on the table. And I had to look this up. Do you know what piccalilli is?
I think it's like relish.
Yeah, it's like this. There's a lot of different forms of it. It reminded me, the description I was reading were like relish or salsa or these kinds of things. And this saved his life.
Pickled veg. Because
he dumped that whole jar on the fat slabs. And it was just enough. It masked it enough that he was able to down it. And one, I think this is a funny situation and it's told in a funny way. But two, this reminds me of times where I've traveled. So I did not used to care for things like mustard. I did not used to like sauerkraut. And then I traveled to Romania. And there were sausages served me that it needed something. You just could not get it down. And the sauerkraut and the mustard saved my life like the piccalilli saved his life here. So there was a connection I felt to this experience.
Well, and it makes the lady's day. Nobody's ever enjoyed her piccalilli that much.
I think she sends him a jar.
You find a way. When people are generous and hosting, you find a way.
That's right.
But yeah, the sheer fat bacon, I don't know if I could do it. Ugh.
Yeah. Siegfried shows up in a couple other stories here. I mean, there's one where there's a rude customer and Siegfried again talks them down like, well, you have to treat him kindly. And Siegfried has another clue to life. He says the way that he never loses his temper is that he just adds a little to the bill anytime somebody's yelling at him. And so he knows that since he's going to be charging them more, it allows him to maintain his, saintly serenity. Now, they all laugh at this because it's ridiculous, but because that same guy calls later and Siegfried just launches into him with his normal tirades. And they remind him, well, weren't you going to just add more to the bill? And he's like, yes, I was. And he comes up with this just astronomical fee to charge for, I think it's a castration or something. So they all go to the farm and they perform this castration. It takes them 10 minutes, right? It's really quick. This is another one of the scenes where James Herriot talks about his actions as an anesthetist. Since Siegfried is such a great horseman and horse surgeon, James usually does the anesthesia, but Siegfried can never just let him do it. He's always complaining and always he's not going down,
James. He's not going to go down.
Yeah.
Not going to go down.
He does an aside that now he does injectables that can put a horse down in 10 seconds. Siegfried still gets the line out between seconds 6 and 7. I mean,
it's not going to go down.
But anyways, it goes smoothly. And then Siegfried goes up to the man who has his checkbook out and he announces the price.
A tenner.
There is this staring contest between the two. And eventually the guy writes off the check. Siegfried takes it, says thank you, walks off. And there's this assumption that they're now done with him because there's no way he's going to have them back after that overpricing, and they're good with that. And they go and they have a drink in a pub, and Siegfried is like feeling around in his pockets, and he's like, I lost the check. I don't have it. Earlier, they were talking about how if they were to go back on the farm, the guy would probably shoot them. So he's like, well, no worries. James, go back and ask for another one.
I've thought of a simple solution. I'll stay here and have one more beer while you slip back and ask him for another check. That's not going to happen.
Siegfried, I love Siegfried, though. His character in these books is so, so wonderful. The next chapter, we learn two big things. We learn that Helen is pregnant, and we learned that Siegfried is going away. So this is World War II, and he has signed up for the Royal Air Force. And in the morning, he's going to be off to training. And so he bumps into James in the hallway in the night, and they talk. They drink. It flashes back to that very, very first day where they met each other and they drank the night away with a bottle of scotch. And it was just the right way to do it. And this was kind of the goodbye to Siegfried before he went off to join the Air Force. They never say goodbye. One thing Siegfried does there is he says, oh, James, I nearly forgot. I was tidying up the books and I find I owe you some money. You do? Yes, and I feel rather bad about it. It goes back to your pre-partnership days when you used to get a cut from Ewing Ross's testing. There was a slip-up somewhere and you were underpaid. Anyway, you've got £50 to come. And he says there's a check in the dresser, grab it tomorrow. And James is really, really glad about this. And I love this line. This is from James. My nearest and dearest are pretty unanimous that I am a bit slow on the uptake, and maybe they are right, because it was many years later before it got through to me that there was never any £50 owing. Siegfried knew I needed a bit of help at that time, and when it all became clear long afterwards, I realized this was exactly how he would do it. No embarrassment to me. He hadn't even handed me the check. It was just a generous and kind action, and so characteristic of this crazy and eccentric and brilliant and kindly partner.
Yeah, and he's going off to train in war. And James knows he's going to get called up as well. This isn't a shock. They just didn't know when. But they're saying goodbye before they go off to fight, to train and to fight. And it says, yeah, they never say goodbye. But there's all these things James wished he could say. I wanted to thank him for being a friend as well as a boss, for teaching me so much, for never letting me down. There were other things too, but I never said them. Come to think of it, I've never even thanked him for that £50. Until now.
I have read in other places that Siegfried, the actual man, didn't like the first book, that he found it kind of a strain on their friendship and didn't like the way he was portrayed. And I wonder if this was kind of a way of James trying to make it up. Because again, Siegfried is not as big a character in this whole book. I mean, there's a few stories about him, but he's nowhere near as kind of over the top and insane in this, and his kindness comes out quite a bit more. And so, I don't know, I wonder if that was a way of trying to kind of heal that breach a little bit. As well as I do think he was just genuinely grateful.
Yeah. So the next one, Helen and Jim have dinner plans. Somebody's going to host them for dinner, and there's a set time. Set times are difficult when you are a country vet, and it just describes how absurd the instances are. These things should be quick. No problem with time. And just everything goes wrong, but he does make it in the end.
This one hit close to home because my poor wife has had to deal with this for my entire career because things happen and somebody comes in late, and it doesn't matter if you've got plans. If somebody's going to die if you don't take care of them, or if the animal is going to die or be lame. I mean, these are things that have to be taken care of. And so, yeah, the families of medical providers suffer, and definitely in this setting. So I was very grateful that he made it to dinner on time. I do like, there is one character I want to mention really quick. And again, this is the middle of Britain. This is the Yorkshire Dales. But one farmer, Mr. Wigan, keeps speaking like a Texan, using words like tarnation. Part of why they're delayed is he's decided he is going to lasso his cows. He can't use a lasso. He's no good at it, but he's so proud of this. He has embraced the cowboy aesthetic, and they're all pretty sure he just got this from movies.
Yeah.
But it's really funny.
I think he gets stepped on by a cow or something. Something drives the Texan, the fake affectation, out of him, and then the Yorkshire accent comes back.
Yeah. And finally, his cowhand can actually get the cows, and it all works. But anyway, I love the British Texan.
The next chapter talks about Tristan. Tristan also is not as big of a character in this book as in the first one, but how he practices medicine, animal medicine, is hilarious. He's got some of that showmanship that Siegfried does, but he doesn't carry it in the same way. He's got his own flavor.
He does, and it was something that James says he could never do because these Yorkshiremen are hard to impress. They are grizzled. They are tough. They are hard-bitten. They always laugh when the vet gets hurt. I mean, James has tried so hard to impress them over the years, and he never seems to be making much headway. And so he was always surprised when the farmers would come up to him and talk about how hard Tristan worked. Because Tristan is not known for working hard. In fact, quite the opposite. And so he was just confused. But then he actually was on a farm where Tristan was working, and he figured it out. He moans. He screams and cries and demonstrates the pain he's experiencing with his arm in the cow. And these grizzled old farmers are just amazed by how hard he's working and are feeding him sips of tea in between contractions. I mean, somehow he pulls it off. And James is like, yeah, I can't do it.
He's a good actor. Very dramatic in effect, but it works.
Totally works.
I don't think it would work for James. It would only work for Tristan.
Only work for Tristan. The next chapter is important because this is where James, for the first time, gets to use a modern antibiotic. In the first book and in this one, he's always speaking about how this was a transition zone, that he started his practice with all these remedies that had been around for hundreds of years and were largely useless and were about to be swept away. This is what swept them away. So he treated these calves. There were 5 calves that, they called the knacker man. The knacker man was there, ready to take them away for dog meat. But James talked the farmer into letting him try these new blue pills, the sulfonamides, sulfa drugs. And within 24 hours, these calves that were going to go to be dog meat are up and running around and eating. And he describes the miracle, the revolution. We here in 2026 have had antibiotics for 100 years. It is just a part of our life. And so infectious disease, though, without antibiotics, it killed regularly and mercilessly. And so this is really the beginning of that revolution in medicine. And he says, I didn't know it at the time, but I had witnessed the beginning of the revolution. It was my first glimpse of the tremendous therapeutic breakthrough, which was to sweep the old remedies into oblivion. The long rows of ornate glass bottles with their carved stoppers and Latin inscriptions would not stand at the dispensary shelves much longer, and their names, dearly familiar for many generations, sweet spirits of nitre, sal ammoniac, tincture of camphor, would be lost and vanish forever. This was the beginning. And just around the corner, a new wonder was waiting, penicillin and the other antibiotics. At last, we had something to work with. At last, we could use drugs which we knew were going to do something.
This chapter actually, I think, is excellent because he is talking about the shift to medicines that can really make that impact between death and life for these animals and then people medicine as well. But here we're talking about the animal care. But he says, however, there was one thing which we vets of those days prior to these medicines used to do, which is sometimes neglected since the arrival of the modern drugs. We attended to the comfort and nursing of the animals. They wrap up every single one of these. They take care of them. They stop up drafts. They do what they can without those medicines to make them as comfortable as possible. And that is very personal and important. And this is a great line. He says, this to me is the thing that lies at the very heart of veterinary practice, the wondering and worrying about how your patient is progressing. Then the long moment when you open that door and find out. He's going to check on them along the way because he cares. Like, he cares about these animals, and he doesn't know when he tries something which way it's going to go. Every time he shows back up, and it's funny how often he'll do that, where he'll go out of his way just to go see.
Mm-hmm.
See how it's going, positive or negative, because he has no idea till he shows up and sees it.
As the book is winding down, there is one chapter where he kind of ruminates on the idea about whether animals remember what he does to them or not. And this one's pretty funny because when you are administering therapeutic interventions, many of them are unpleasant. Nobody likes going to the dentist. Nobody likes going to the doctor. And he can't imagine any of the animals like going to the vet or the things he does with them. And so he rattles off this sequence of particular animals he remembers. There's one little dachshund that the owner like warns him ahead of time. You know, you need to trim his nails, but I'm not going to hold him. James is like, why won't you hold him? He's like, you don't understand. This little guy holds a grudge. I'm not touching him. I'm leaving. And the owner left.
He's not wrong. James ends up going to this bar, but he'll only speak in a whisper because if the dog overhears him, he will not stop barking. He barks. It says it's like if dogs could swear, he would get the biggest cursing in history.
Because he trimmed his nails. Like, there's a grudge this little dog holds.
And it's funny, it's the little dog, because then there's the big dog, and those are the ones that you'd think would be very, very scary. But there's this big dog who lets it like trim away like dead flesh and muscle passively, at ease. And it's, again, the personality, and it doesn't have a lot to do with the size.
Right, yeah, because this poor dog, that Irish setter, he's caught in a trap, one of those nasty animal traps that are outlawed now in Britain, but... he thought he was going to lose the paw, but he was able, because of antibiotics, right? He was able to put this new medicine in, and it took weeks, but he was able to save this paw. But in the meantime, he caused a lot of pain to this dog, but the dog still loved him. The dog just at heart was personable. But then the little dog, the terrier that he saves from poisoning, doesn't like him. He says he can see it from the little dog's perspective. The dog ate some rat poison that the owner had mixed with porridge to try and kill some rats, and were horrified to find that the dog had got into it. And so James rushes in, grabs the dog off the rug, puts some nasty like mixed mustard stuff into him to make him throw up, saves his life. But the dog, he says, at his point of view, he was just, he ate something, was taking a nap, and this guy ran in and did all this stuff to him. And so ever after, this little terrier, when he's walking through the streets, would like nip at his heels. Said he wouldn't bite him, but he would like nip at his pants, and is just to remind him that I remember what you did.
That dog's name is Timmy. So this next chapter starts, I suppose there was a wry humor in the fact that my call-up papers arrived on my birthday, but I didn't see the joke at the time. He has now been called up to the Royal Air Force. Again, he knew it was coming, didn't know when, showed up on his birthday.
Yeah, and I think he had like 1 week or 2 weeks to get his affairs in order and get everything set up. And so in this chapter, it has his last visit. And it is a classic Yorkshire visit. I mean, it is out in the middle of nowhere to this guy that doesn't even have a car, doesn't have a telephone. And it's a sheepdog. It's a big English sheepdog who has dislocated a limb. And James goes out. And James does often write in the vernacular, but he says this guy spoke in the true old Yorkshire, and he says, I won't even try and reproduce it. So he doesn't even do the vernacular. He just gives him normal words on this, but he loved the way this guy spoke.
But the dog, I think its leg is like, it's funny, the call is like, his leg's funny. And there are stories in here like, well, like funny how? Like, give me more information. And like, well, it's just funny.
Yeah.
And so he assumes that he'll get there and it'll be something, unimportant. No. It is funny. The whole thing is at this great, impossible angle.
It is a full-on dislocated front leg. So imagine your arm like at 90 degrees away from where it should be. It is completely dislocated. And so James is thinking, what am I going to do? Because this is probably going to require a surgery. This needs to be anesthetized. I need the dog to be asleep. But he starts to do an exam. And he's moving over the bones and the joints and saying, man, what am I going to do? I mean, if he was anesthetized, I would move my fingers here and I would try and pull this way to see. And all of a sudden, he feels it shift. He feels it move under his fingers and the dog is healed. he has reset this dislocated joint almost accidentally as part of his exam. And there's a couple things about this, again, that jumped out to me. Reading this as a doctor, I've had this experience. And especially for dislocations, fingers, knees, shoulders, often, and especially if you're doing it with kids, frequently, if you just do the exam in such a way that you're not freaking them out, they can relax enough that the normal things will just slip back into place. And when it does, it's magic. And it's wonderful because then you don't have to give them shots. You don't have to put them through anything. You're just better. And it goes from horrific pain to normal function almost immediately. And so I've had that moment, and I loved his description of that moment. But I also love that he described that this happened out in the middle of nowhere. He says it would have been appropriate to have like cheering students and a whole band playing for this incredible, miraculous thing. But the guy was pretty understated. He's like, oh, that's great. You fixed him then. And he says, but in its own way, that was such a wonderful compliment because this guy just assumed that I was going to be able to help him. I didn't think I was going to be able to help him. I was terrified of this, but the guy had such confidence in me. And that was wonderful that this beautiful thing happened out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, and the flip side of that as well, because he has so many of these hard moments or humiliating moments that he has to carry with him. And so that it says a glorious accident happened that should have all this fanfare. It's just another quiet moment that he gets to tuck away. It's such a collection, a mixed collection of experiences that contextualize and help every other call he ever goes on. This educates that and helps him keep perspective, which I think is why he's such a fantastic storyteller.
Yeah.
Because it is that mix of things. And even when it goes great, there's nobody saw it. But he keeps a sense of humor about it through that, and it's wonderful.
And this man, though, did see it. And this man, he gets one kind of other piece of wisdom from him, which I love. Because the guy says, so I hear you're going away. He's heard that he's been called up for the war, and Harry's like, yep, I'm going. And the man's like, yeah, couldn't do it. Couldn't go to London, couldn't go. He said, I went to Broughton once, and I couldn't walk there. And he's like, you couldn't walk? Nay, there were that many people about. I had to take big steps and little ones, then big steps and little ones again. Couldn't get going. And that idea of big steps and little ones, that having to navigate a crowd, that lack of freedom, that claustrophobia that this countryman experienced. What a wonderful way of explaining that. Big steps and little ones.
And James says, tomorrow I would be far from here, in London, pushing my way through the crowds, taking big steps and little ones.
And then he does. The last chapter is very short.
So we learned at the beginning that in his newly married life, they had these set traditions that they'd started where when he'd go to work, when he'd leave for a call, he'd look up at their their tall window, and Helen would wave with a dishcloth out the window. Here, he's not going on a call. He's going to his Air Force training, but he does the same thing. He looks back up at the window. She's crying, but she waves out the window with her dishcloth.
Sam the Beagle can't understand why he didn't hold the door open, why he didn't pause to let him go. And James says he's going to go do this, right? It's his duty, but when he gets back, nothing is ever going to take him away again. I have one final thought that I would like to say here, and this goes back to Granville Bennett.
Okay.
I have to speak more about Granville. I had a dear, dear friend. I have a dear friend in the Navy whose name is Curtis. Curtis has always been my Granville Bennett, a man of just incredible clinical skill, who's good at everything he does, but who is larger than life, who has generosity that you just wouldn't believe, that you step into the home and he's got a beautiful wife, beautiful family. We often joked about it being a Kurt world. Everything seemed to open up for him, but always with that generosity and always a man that could get me drunker than anybody else. And so I just want to say thank you to my own personal Granville Bennett. Kurt, fair winds and following seas.
I think we'll end it with the poem that starts this book by Cecil Francis Alexander, 1818 to 1895. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all.
And with that, we'll turn the page, and we hope you join us for the next chapter.